facing as a company, and as well as some of the thoughts that you have about our event. For those of you who don't know me, I am Jeff Gallo of CPA firm Grennan Fender here in Orlando. This is actually, I want to say this is probably the 14th event that we've had on campus here in the past 3 years. Some of you have been here before. As you know, our CEO Leadership Forums group was formed specifically to align like-minded firms around a common goal. The common goal was to bring C-level executives to campus, back to school, and connect them with the school and students. Ultimately, our dream is to connect the students from certain applied sciences degrees and baccalaureate degrees directly to small, mid-sized, second-stage businesses just like you. We actually have a student here. We typically, when school is in session, we typically have 4 or 5 here, but we are going to do a lot more than that in the coming year. And my friend Nasser Hidayat is going to share some of that with you at the end of the program. But before we get going, I'd like to bring Nasser up just for a quick moment. And Nasser Hidayat, appreciate your being here this morning. All right, bro.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. As Jeff mentioned, well, first let me welcome you to Valencia College West Campus, our university partner building. And as you can see, the campus doesn't look chaotic today because students are not coming back till Monday. Faculty is back today, but they are all at East Campus, one of our 6 largest campus. And today is the faculty welcome back. So they're all over there and being welcomed back by the college president and leadership, and they will be starting their fall term work as of today. So I was talking to one of them the other day, and he says, yeah, we were off, but not long enough. I said, well, you were off for 2 weeks. Don't say not long enough, just say it was good. But we don't get those days off because my work is 24/7, 12 days, 12 months a year. And of course, with Jeff, who knows, that would be 14 months a year, right, if we had it. Anyway, let me share with you first, if you're looking for the washroom to your right here, past the staircase to your right. And very briefly, Valencia College is 71,000 students strong and growing. We predicted that when we started our first door to our student back in 1968, we said we're going to probably house 20,000 students if we do a good job. In 1984, we were at 38,000 students. And our president predicted that at the rate we're growing, the next 50 years, Valencia College would be at 150,000 students. And I believe that because the rate of growth is tremendous, the way we see it. We have 6 campuses that offer classes. And among the 6 campuses, we, as I mentioned, 71,000 students. 13,000 of those students are majoring in workforce programs. Whether they are associate degrees, that we have 37 of those in all clusters. We have 97 short-term college credit certificates, and we also have 5 baccalaureate degrees. And the 6th one is being submitted to the Department of Education for approval, and that is our baccalaureate degree in software development. And Jeff was talking to me and said, so any new baccalaureate degree? I said, well, as you know, the campus number 7 is going to be open in August of 2019, August 26th to be exact, and that's our downtown campus in partnership with UCF. And of course, we're going to have the School of Culinary Art in downtown, which will be the best culinary school in America, better than the CIA in Napa Valley. So To do that, then we needed a strong partners. And of course, Walt Disney World is going to be one of our major partners with that campus. And so what can we do to the next level? So the next baccalaureate degree that we are going to be looking into would be baccalaureate degree in culinary art. Because we do have the associate degrees, but then we need to go to the next level. Valencia College, as a direct connect, which is a direct partnership with UCF, our students have a smooth transition from the 2-year degree to 4-year degree. UCF offers multiple baccalaureate degrees right in this campus, in this building. That's why it's called UCF Valencia Partner Facility. And their office is right there. And the students do not have to put a foot on the main campus at UCF. They start with native Valencia students here, they finish here. And the purpose of the downtown campus is for the students to start at downtown and finish at downtown with their 2-year and baccalaureate degree with UCF. So as a result of Direct Connect, 22% of all UCF graduates started at Valencia College. And that's huge for us, and we are very excited about that news and so forth. So welcome. We have a great information and data and news to share with you at the end of the program. I need to go to East Campus just to say I'm here, then I turn around and come back. And that's why I wanted to welcome you, and I will see you all later. Yes? Is your business office open today? The business, everything is open, only faculty all are gathering on East Campus, but everywhere is open. Business is open.
Signing up for your free classes will start today.
Please do. Please do. Thank you. Okay? Thank you.
Great, thank you. First thing I'm going to ask, I'm passing a sign-in sheet because we didn't have one, and I apologize. So that is, so if you put your name and company and email on there, that would be most appreciated. Okay. Here is our agenda. I won't bore you with it, but what we're going to do here, this is be an interactive session, and at the end of towards the end of the program, David Duda, the CEO of Duda & Sons, will be here, and that is going to be terrific. One thing I would like to start all of us doing, if you would, is we're going to do a very quick intro, all right? And I'd like each person, as we go around the room, give your name and your company, all right, and then one word that defines you, okay? One word that defines you. Actually, the last time we did this, we had at least this many people in the room, and there wasn't one overlap, which was really amazing. So I'm going to start over here with my friend Eric Shulman.
Eric Shulman, Sandler Training, Growth.
Darryl Corbett, JJ's Waste and Recycling, Australian.
Chris Stubbs, Link Staffing, Relentless.
Christy Harris, Dynafier, Inquisitive.
Ken Hoffman, Dynafier, Protection.
Tim Mark, Patterson Mark Communications, Creative.
Brianna Gonzalez, Student, Quirky.
Desiree Rodriguez, HR Consult Pro, Enthusiastic.
Dorothy Mowbray, Roar Internet Marketing, Digital.
Bill Easter, Simplastics, Passion.
Fran Rivera with Big Vision, Adaptable.
Elise Quinn, Big Vision, and I would say Communicator.
Steve Hall, Marriott, Insightful.
Steve Craig, KCG Engineering, Innovative.
Scott McComas, McComas CG Consulting Group, Mindset.
Sandy Turner, Retirement Plan Specialist, Engaged.
Steve Ruddock, Mental Services, Insightful.
Steve Burkett Engineering, that.
Don Shin, Paul Vic Golf, Crazy.
Eric Skolnik, Strategic Partners, Integrity.
Mike Pesci, the company's called The Listening Rock, and I'm strategic.
Jeremy Sloan, Watson, Sloan & Johnson, Determined.
Ernani Young, Liquid Capital Solutions, partner.
Craig Rodriguez, CSR and Associates, Creative.
Ron Wilkinson and Perspective Collaborative.
Jose Mazariegos, City National Bank, Loyal.
Sean Meter, BCI Capital, formerly known as City National Capital Finance, and Valuable.
Kevin Slazak, City National Bank, learner.
Chad Wanikoff, City National Bank, Advice.
Nicole McMurray, I was going to say strategic, but sitting behind you, I'm going to say short. Lauren Arevalo, Apple One, dedicated. Stephanie Rosario, Apple One, fun.
Brian Buck, City National, Curious.
John Pope, City National, Ambitious.
John Anderson, Merchant Consulting Service, listening.
RayWatson, Grow FL, and CEO Nexus.
And what defines you, one word? And Jeff Gallo, Brennan Fender, Hesse Paparod, server. Okay. All right. We are going to thank you for all of that. It's always intriguing when we hear the one word that defines you. This is really just a graphic which speaks to the assessment that we all passed out to you. And I'm going to ask John Anderson to pass those out again. During this morning, I would appreciate, because we actually tabulate all these results and put them in with a big database. We've done hundreds of these in the past few years, but it measures your level of concern from not concerned at all, 0 to 5 being crucial. All right, in all of these general areas, okay, we actually share these with the college and their baccalaureate program. The new one that they got passed last July is in business, and we're trying to help them tweak the course programs and the discourse that they have in the classroom, specifically to these things that are of interest and of concern to you. So I would ask, if you have not filled out one of those, it takes literally 3 minutes to do, and please do that. This next segment is, I guess, for those of you who don't know Eric Shulman, shame on you. But Eric is a great entertainer as well as an insightful CEO of his own business. And he guides CEOs and their sales teams and sales efforts to hit the mark. So he's going to take us through a really interesting, I've been looking forward to this, Eric, okay?
Me too.
A really interesting exercise. So please welcome Eric Shulman, Sandler Training.
I'm always interested in what I'm going to say too, because you always have a script. Is there a clicker?
Yes, up there.
And you never stick to the script. I have to apologize up front. My wife and I are in the middle of moving. We got out of a house we've been in for 18 years, got in, found out there was mold, had to replace the AC and have it demolded. And at 4 o'clock yesterday, they said, now you can begin to unpack. So until about 11 o'clock last night, I was unpacking an 18-year home that we moved from one place to another place. So I'm not at the top of my game today. I hurt from the neck down. I'm a little numb from the neck up. And Nicole, you said short. My wife is 4'6.5" tall. She still thinks I have hair, by the way.
Bring her next time to help my self-confidence.
I will. Productive paranoia. Jim Collins wrote a book, Great by Choice. How many have read Good to Great? The first line of that book, good is the enemy of great. I teach whole classes just on that one line. But Great by Choice, he defined what he called his 3 core behaviors that you need to do to be a 10x leader. And they are discipline, creativity, and when I first heard the term productive paranoia, it felt like an oxymoron, military intelligence, right? Jumbo shrimp. So what is productive paranoia? the only thing constant, I've been in business, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started out working for my parents for 20 years in the retail record and music business. Anybody that's been around town for a long time, if you remember the Music Shack stores, that was my family. I went into the direct mail business and started a company called National List Council through the 80s and the early 90s. And around 1989, 1990, 91, there was a recession. How many of you were in business back then? Remember the early 90s recession? Well, I have always been the eternal optimist. Not only is the cup full, half full, but I'm always going to get the cup. And my dad always used to give me a hard time about that. Well, I decided I was going to power through this recession. And I never laid anybody off, and I stopped taking paychecks, and I did all the things that you do when you let your ego get in the way and you don't look at reality. It cost me a lot of money. I eventually sold the business a few years later. But I learned a couple of things. I never was asking, what if? What if you lose your biggest customer tomorrow? And if your biggest customer is more than 10% of your business, God forbid 20, 30, I've got some clients where their biggest customer is 50 and 60% of their business. What if you lose your biggest customer? Are you prepared for that? What if you lose your key person, your right-hand man or woman in your organization tomorrow? What if they go to the competition? Are you prepared for that? Have you planned for that? What if you get sick? Anybody here had a serious illness that incapacitated them? About 4 months ago, April 25th, I'm in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on a cruise ship. I'm doing a first transatlantic crossing to England, and I had a stroke. Not a little stroke where you forget stuff, where you couldn't move the whole left side of your body. I mean, I couldn't literally lift a finger. And as I'm laying there in the hospital, literally 4 days out of Miami, 4 days before you get to France, there's no way they're getting you off the boat. I'm sitting and I'm trying to move a finger, and I'm saying, what if it doesn't come back? Am I prepared? Well, luckily, I have a right-hand guy named Paul Castaneda. Some of you know Paul. And Paul, I know, is able to teach the classes. But what if I wasn't prepared for that? Luckily, about 24 hours later, I began to walk again. And the only thing I've lost is a little bit of fine motor skills in these two fingers. I can't play guitar as well as I used to. Thank goodness for that. But I really started to think, what if? What if the competition opens up? What if new competition opens up? What if a big player comes into your marketplace? This is the kind of stuff at 3 in the morning you wake up and then you can't go back to sleep, right? What if these things happen? Are you prepared for that? We know that things are going to change. Everybody's talking about the coming recession. We know that every 8 to 10 to 12 years, there's a recession. I was talking with Jose from the bank. Where is he? Over there. And we talked about the fact that we are in the longest sustained bull market I think in history right now. It's got to change. Tomorrow, next year, next month, things are going to change. Are we prepared for that? In 2009, we got hit really, really hard with a recession. Were you prepared for the recession? How many of us were prepared? Anybody? 1 or 2. You smart ones. The rest of us, we expected it to go on. People lost houses, people lost businesses. It's interesting. My business is interesting. I do sales training for a living. When times are bad, people need me more, but they don't have the money to spend. When times are good, people don't think they need me, but they have the money. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword for me. Oh, we're doing okay, I know. Is it really paranoia if they're out to get you? Preparing for all of this stuff, giving yourself the buffer. Do you put extra cash away? How many have a corporate savings account? Start a corporate savings account. Put $100 or $1,000. You get a big check-in, put $5,000 away and forget that it's there. 6 months later, when you're having trouble making payroll, Oh crap, we got 20 or 30 grand in the corporate savings account. Work on collections. I have an accounting guy who is the best that I've ever had. I've been in business on and off, I mean, other than 8 years when I worked for a consulting company, I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. I've got the best accounting guy I've ever had. He started going through stuff. He found $18,000 that we had forgotten or missed billing on. Is there money lying in your business that you haven't picked up? Money that's hanging out there too long. We all have clients that we like, right? Best 120-day account I've got. What's the cost of that capital sitting out there for a long period of time? What does it cost you to borrow to be able to cover the fact that they're not? Those of you in the construction world, how many construction people do we have here? You get a big job, right? $1 million job. Well, they're going to pay 60, 90 days out. You got to carry all of your expenses and your payroll for that 60 to 90 days in order to take on that multi-million-dollar job. Are you prepared for that? I was sitting with a client out in Winter Garden yesterday, and they've grown phenomenally. They were a little $500,000 business being run out of the house when we started with them 4 or 5 years ago. They'll hit $6 million next year. And it's a very tight family, husband, wife, the 2 sons, and they're going to grow from 4 to 6 million. And I asked him, I said, Scott, I said, are you prepared to carry the receivables on doing another $2 million a year? He had the pieces in place. He had the line of credit set up. He knew exactly, he'd already thought about it, so he was prepared for that. You can sell, anybody hear the term, you can sell yourself out of business? Yeah. All of a sudden you got all these receivables and you got $500,000, you're waiting for it to come in, and you got people that are knocking on your door to collect. Are you prepared for those kind of things? Do you have the buffer? Do you have the buffer on people? How deep is your bench? Is it 1 deep, or do you have people behind? If so-and-so falls, or so-and-so moves to Montana because mom is sick and they got to go take care of mom, is that going to cripple you? How many years of experience walk out the door when they walk out the door? 10X leaders. How do you become a 10X leader? Let me make a statement that no one in here will like, but is 100% true. No matter what your business, you will lose 100% of the clients you currently have. You will eventually lose 100% of your current clients. They'll die. They'll sell the business. They'll merge with somebody else. Somebody in your office is going to screw up. You're going to leave the business, but you will eventually lose every client you currently have. And when you land that big client, the day you land that big client, there's a Stanley rule. Your biggest client is your prospect's biggest prospect, is your competitor's biggest prospect. When you land a client, what steps do you take to cement them? Are you training your people on customer care? Are you training your people to make clients sticky? Because here's the thing, how many of us are in sales? Okay, put your hands down. How many of you are married, in a relationship, have people you work with, have friends? You're in sales. People don't want to think that they're in sales. But if you've ever convinced somebody on what movie to go to, where we're going to have dinner, whether tonight's the night, you're in sales. So how do you make clients sticky? It's a relationship. There's an engagement, and Scott can speak to some of this stuff. How do you make clients sticky? I touch them. I'm the sales guy. I bring them in. They're never going to be happy with you than the day they sign the contract. It's like marriage. You're never happier than the day you sign the contract, because everything's going right at that point. Do you set expectations with your clients as to how you're going to deliver and what you're going to be delivering and how you're going to interact? Do you set up time frames? In the Sandler world, we call them upfront contracts, so that they know what to expect, when to expect it, and then be your word. You've got to do what you say you're going to do. Do your people know how much a client is worth? The company that I'm working with, I said, out in Winter Garden, their average order is $300. So if I piss you off on a $300 order, and I'm an employee, I think I've lost a $300 sale. Well, the average client orders 4 or 5 times a year. So that client's actually worth $1,500. And they stay 10 years, so that client's worth $15,000. And they think they screwed up a $300 order. Do you guys get referrals from your clients? 1 a year, 2 a year? If you get 2 referrals a year from that client for 10 years, that's 20 referrals that are each worth $15,000. Well, that's $300,000. And they think they're upset about a $300 order. They don't see the big picture. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't paint the big picture for them, they'll never see it. That's what a 10X leader does. You paint a clear picture, your people begin to understand what it is that they are responsible for. And then the last thing I want to cover is this. Are you accountable to someone? Do you have an accountability partner? And this is, I'm speaking to the CEOs and the presidents in the room. It's lonely at the top, okay? Do you have someone that can call BS on you? And do you give them permission to do that? One of the exercises I teach is this, and you might do this before you leave today. If there's someone in here that you know, like, and trust, get with them before you leave and say, I'd like to be an accountability partner with you. And take out a $100 bill and hand them a $100 bill, and let them hand you a $100 bill. Better yet, how about a $100 check? And if $100 isn't enough to hurt, how about a $500 check? I give Chris a $500 check. I'm going to be an accountability partner with you. You give me a $500 out of your personal account, not your business account.
I married my accountability partner 45 years ago.
That's good. But it hurts more if you've got to give it to somebody outside of your marriage. And here's the thing. I'm going to commit to Chris to doing certain things every week. Whether it's a certain number of calls, certain number of behaviors, certain number of educational or networking events, and he's going to commit to me to doing certain things. Now, he may commit to doing different things because he's got different priorities and different goals than I do. And every week we talk on the phone. The first week that I don't do what I committed to him, he gets to cash my check. And I have to now give him another one. I keep the check directly over my desk so I can look at it every day. And what's interesting is this, the day before I have to call him, if I haven't done what I told you that I was going to do, I get on the phone and I go do it. You will do more, ladies and gentlemen, to save the $500 than you will to make $5,000. Because it hurts, it's personal, it's coming out of your own wallet. My accountability partner is a guy named Kevin Shulman. No relation, he's another Sandler trainer up in New Jersey. We talk on Tuesday mornings at 6:30 a.m. on our way to a networking meeting. I'm going to one at the Citrus Club, and he's going to one up in New Jersey. How you doing? Where are your billings at? Did you do your behaviors? Did you close the account you told me you were going to close? And we do the same thing back and forth. To be at the top of the stack, to be a 10X leader, you've got to do what other people won't do. Any questions? There's a test afterwards. They told you there's a test, right? You can go from good to great. You can remain great, but you've got to do what other people won't do. Hopefully that was helpful, guys. Thanks.
Okay, terrific. Eric, timeless, that's for sure.
No, 20 minutes.
No, timeless. I'm saying they're timeless concepts. Thank you. Next speaker has become a dear friend of mine and the entire group, and she is anything but laid back. So I just want to say, without further ado, of course, Nicole McMurray of Apple One. Take it off.
If you interview my husband, he says he takes a lot of naps when I'm not home because I talk a lot. But I won't today. We're on a time limit. So I'm Nicole McMurray. I am the regional manager for Apple One Employment Services. I don't know if you've ever heard of us. I know we have some clients in the room, but I've been with Apple One for 14 years, 14 and a half years. And so I just want to thank you for being a part of our room today, for being a part of this discussion. Nothing is more fun than talking about the next recession when the economy is so great, right? It's kind of like opening up your credit card bill on Christmas morning. Nobody wants to do that. But you care enough to prepare, and so I appreciate that. In our region, we all based our leadership this year on the book Great by Choice, and we loved that idea as leaders about productive paranoia. Eric did such a good job defining that for us. So we know in what we do that things are going to go wrong, but do we always take the steps to prepare? And that's what we're going to work on this morning. I think we like to think that we're a lot more prepared than we are. February 14th falls on the same day every year, and yet on the 13th, if you go to Target in the aisle, you'll see 100 men finding cards for their beautiful wives, right? So we know it's on the horizon, but for whatever reason, we don't take the time to prepare. Last July, at our President's Council for Apple One, our CEO, Janice Bryant-Howroyd, told the story of the 3 little pigs. And we all know the story of the 3 little pigs. And so she asked us as business leaders within her organization, do we have a brick house, do we have a wood house, or do we have a straw house? And now every single month at Apple One, we roll out a brick house report for all of the offices within the organization, and we look at different metrics within our business to make sure that we have sustainability in what we do. And so I love those ideas, right? This productive paranoia, but then planning and understanding our business. And so when I worked with Jeff, I had all these ideas in my head of things that I wanted to work on, but we wanted to create an activity that would bring these 2 thoughts together. So a brick house, and this is going to be in your book, we're going to work out together, but we're going to go through this in just a moment. I just thought for us to be connected, if I could just briefly share a little bit of my story. I know we raised our hands, some of us have lived through recessions, but I started Apple One in 2004 and moved into a leadership role in 2008. And the word recession started looming, right? It was on the news, it was in different articles. I had no business exposure to that word. And so I didn't understand what it would mean. In 2009, I'm in a staffing agency. My job at the time was to find people jobs. It still is today, admin, clerical, accounting, that's what we did. And in 2009, my full-time job became letting people go. All I did was call people and tell them, our client's closing, you don't have a job anymore, right? Your assignment ends today. It was one of the most difficult and challenging experiences that I've had as a leader, right? Just calling people and ending their assignments. It was a terrible place to be. And we were really focused on admin and clerical, and so that was something that our clients could easily say, hey, we don't need this right now. So I called my boss and I asked if I could organically start an IT division within Apple One. We were struggling. All of our candidates weren't finding jobs. And the government was still spending money, and we have our top secret clearance. So at that time, a gaming company closed, and I took 21 software engineers and I placed them at a Department of Defense client. To put it in a numbers perspective, in 2009, the year before, we had done $300,000 in profit after all of our operating expenses. In 2009, it was $100,000. And then the following year, when we added the different divisions, and I'll explain this in a second, we did close to $500,000, and then over $900,000, and then we became the leading branch in the entire United States for Apple One. And I only share those numbers with you because every dollar that we make at Apple One is attached to somebody finding work. And so I was so excited that we were able to change our circumstance. So when we look at areas of strength, right? For a brick house, its improvement will just enhance the sustainability, right? I'm walking us through this exercise that we're going to do together. Wood house. This means it needs work, right? If we're evaluating our business, it's going to require a plan of action to transition. That's why we're here, right? We hear about productive paranoia. Aflac, right? We buy insurance because they scare us that we're going to get hit by a car on the way out of the parking lot, right? And so how do we think about this? What is that going to look like? And then straw house, immediate action required, right? This could burn down at every second. That big bad wolf could come and take you down, right? And we do not want that to happen in our business. Fire bullets. Mini experiments. What does this mean? In the book Great by Choice, they talk about, if you haven't read it, firing bullets and then cannonballs. And I love this idea. I love this methodology because sometimes we just go all guns a-blazing, don't we? Right? We have an idea. We take all of our gunpowder, everything we have, we launch it into that cannon, and we just let it explode, and we miss the target. And then we're completely out of all of our resources. But if we fire mini bullets, and we decide, hey, this might work, right? This could be something that might work for my organization, and we hit the target, then we can load up that cannonball and have a little bit more confidence, right? Or a whole lot of confidence. I told my story just briefly because we fired little bullets, right? Is technical gonna work? I don't know what that looks like. Let me just see. Oh yeah, this is really working, right? I like this. We're gonna load up this cannonball and ride this puppy. Okay, so fire bullets. Here is the clinical definition in the book. It is a concept developed in the book Great by Choice. First, you fire bullets, low cost, low risk. That is the key, right? Low cost, low risk, low distraction experiments. Have you ever worked for a leader that decided they were going to change something overnight and then distracted everyone, and it never works, right? That's why you started your own company. To figure out, that was your motivation, right? To figure out what will work, calibrating your line of sight by taking small shots, right? That word calibration is really important. Then once you have empirical validation, that's that qualified gut feeling, right? You fire a cannonball. And that's concentrated resources into a big bet. It's still not guaranteed, but man, we're feeling good about this decision, right? Calibrated cannonballs correlate with outside results. Uncalibrated cannonballs correlate with disaster. The ability to turn small, proven ideas, bullets, into huge hits, cannonball, counts more than the sheer amount of pure innovation, right? It is our job as leaders to prepare our people, so when the next dip in the market happens, we can say, hey guys, we've prepared for this. Eyes on me as your leader, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna hurt, it's gonna sting, but man, we've got those acorns cranking, right? We have that savings account, we've prepared for this, it's going to be okay. And I do a lot of training for Apple One on culture and team development, and people always ask me, what is it like to run $1 million team? And I always remind them, I never think about that. I only think about what it was like to run a team that was losing everything, right? That prepared me for so much, and I want the strength for my team and for you guys, right, to be able to say, eyes on me, it's gonna be okay. So I'm actually doing this with my leadership team in my region at Apple One, and Jeff and I kind of got together and decided what would be the most important things for this room. And in adult learning, we never like to listen for a long time, right? So we're gonna, in a moment, break us out into groups so we can have some interaction and spend some time together. We have some really smart people in this room, and I'm excited to learn from each other. Just a housekeeping item, if you're in a group, everyone is equally important and has something to say. So I'd ask if you tend to be a time crook that you would put it aside, right? We all have those time pirates in our morning meeting, right? We're like, we get you have ideas, close it, okay? So in this activity, we're gonna rank ourselves, right? In the group environment, you either have a brick house, a wood house, or a straw house. It's okay. I have some straw house areas that I'm working on right now too, right? The big bad wolf is out there. So we're gonna work through 5 areas, and then how we combined it, right? 3 little pigs, and then Great by Choice. How is this all coming together? Your mind's about to be blown because it's right here. So client diversity, I wrote out some questions to get you guys thinking. Do you have clients that will spend money with you in an economic downturn? We call these clients recession investors, right? That's how I want you guys to look at them. Who will spend money during an economic downturn? Are they in your client database? We had offices at Apple One that were highly based in construction that absolutely crashed in the market. There was no business sustainability, right? So now with my team, if you get a client potentially in construction or hospitality, I want you to get a client in aviation or in government services, something in our business model that's going to balance out that idea of sustainability, that if 2 of my clients went away and the next recession hits, team, eyes on me, it's going to be okay, we prepared for this. So I want you to rank it right now, and then as a group, interactive, don't do it yet, how do I fire a bullet, and then what will be my cannonball, right? What's going to be kind of a low-risk way to explore this? And then maybe you don't answer the cannonball question right now. We can launch those puppies soon. Okay, concentration risk. Eric touched on this too. What does your business mix look like? Does 50% or more of your business rest in one client? How long is your sales cycle to obtain new business, right? I don't think we think about that. So if our biggest client went away, how long is it going to take to get another one? Is your business cycle a year? Well, let's get started, people, right? Let's have a kickoff party tomorrow. Again, you're going to rank yourself bullet, cannonball, and we're going to discuss this as a group. I was on the phone with Jeff. I'm like, I like to call this the Christopher Columbus principle, right? We only have 5 of these. Target business versus new business. Do you know what additional revenue streams exist in your industry? If so, what would be the potential GM on that sector? Who on your team can begin to explore? Who will be your Christopher Columbus, right? We talked about low distractions in Great by Choice. So who's that one person on your team that you're like, hey, can you go just sail a little bit and let's see if this works? For me, IT, I wanted to get started, and is it going to be profitable? The answer was it did. It created a lifeline for my team, sustainability. So there might be an area or a sector that you're excited about, but what are the gross margin percentages on that? What is it going to offer to your organization? Will you be able to make money in that area? And then elastic boundaries. I love saying this to my team. Do you live with productive paranoia? Do you know what you'd be willing to give up to retain your business during the next downturn? Do you have a plan to engage and to measure client loyalty? And will that stay with you? Right? So for me, it's always asking the question, what would I be willing to give up? Right? What would my markups look like? What would it look like if I said to a client, let's work this out together? And so we always want to have those conversations now to be willing to know what that looks like when it happens, right? And then last, people and process. How would you rank your people and processes right now? Eric touched on this. We're just going to do a little bit more. Do you have the right people right now? Do you possess is it documented and reviewed, your processes? Who do you need to hire that does not exist on your team right now? I have some questions that I could give you after. I don't know if they made it in the book, Jeff, the questions that we talked about. I don't think they're in there, but okay. But I have those if you want me to email you, no problem. But just, do we have the right people right now, right? So to begin to look at that. So there's 5 areas that I think are really important to our business. We're going to get together in groups of 3 or 4, right? If that's okay, we'll just kind of go through this. Again, interactive, we're all here to learn, no time crooks. So we're going to take the next, I think, 20 minutes, Jeff, does that work? To just kind of go through this, talk about a group, and do some idea sharing. So form those circles, camp. Here we go. All right. You guys can just break out and decide 3 or 4. I'm going to let you guys do the math. Be crazy.
How you doing?
All right, folks.
Need that, Jeff.
Thank you for your quick attention here. Before we call up our next speaker, I actually have a I just want to take an opportunity to ask one of the newbies in the room to take 30 seconds and share about her life story. Britt, you're on the spot.
Oh, wow.
Because you weren't here. You have 30 seconds to say who you are and what one word defines you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Britt Anderson with Mercury Consulting Service. I guess the one word that would describe us would be serve.
There you go. Oh, of course, your dad put me up to that, so you.
Yeah, leave her alone. Hey, Daddy.
There you go. Okay. Next up, we have Jeff Taylor from City National Bank. Jeff is like I'll just say the protector of the vault, if you will, with the bank. He does a lot of underwriting. And so you're going to get some really interesting insights on what the bank or your lender's perspective is today as it relates to when the next recession hits, because they're always looking that way. So I'd like to introduce Jeff Taylor.
Yeah, Josh.
Right, so when Jeff asked me to speak, I knew that I'd be in an audience full of a lot of bright people, and kind of the first thing that came out is, what could I offer that's a little unique from maybe what the other speakers would offer. So, my goal today is to really kind of focus on a bank perspective. Whether you're dealing with banks now or you deal with banks in the future, at some point it's almost an inevitable part of running a business and should be applicable to pretty much everybody. Just a little background on me. Like you said, I'm currently I'm in a credit approval role. I manage underwriters. I do a little bit of underwriting. And I'm that pesky guy that asks those detailed questions about your business just to make sure, we feel like your risk profile is appropriate, that a loan made is going to be a loan paid as agreed. And a lot of times there's a disconnect with, why are these questions being asked? Why is this relevant? So I'm going to try and give a little bit more on that, but also in the context of recession planning itself. I've been in Central Florida for my entire career, about 15 years. About half of that has been with smaller community banks in the area, and about half has been with bigger banks. So I've seen both sides. I was at a bank, RBC Bank was later acquired by PNC Bank, but when the recession hit, that's where I was at, and there was a lot of overreaction on banks' parts. It got to the point where you couldn't get a loan unless you really didn't need it. They were giving loans to the super wealthy, the best businesses, and that was about it. It was a terrible recession, and it probably isn't going to be the expectation of future recessions. But if people who could get through that recession, you think could get through about anything. So maybe just quickly a show of hands so I can gauge my audience. How many people here were either business owners or senior management from 2008 to 2010? Okay. Anyone here lose a job in that time? How many people here had difficulty with banks in any part? Some more there. It's common, yeah. Bankers are kind of lumped with lawyers now, so I understand. So I kind of want to start with this slide, because I think to me, if I'm going to explain the fundamental disconnect I frequently see with a business owner and the mindset of a bank, it kind of lies in here. My experience with a typical business owner, especially a small business owner who's entrepreneurial, not afraid to take risks, is looking for opportunities, they're very much in the now and what they're going to be this year. And the bank mindset tends to look back at your past financial statements to say, hey, this is the demonstration over a multi-year period of what they're going to perform like. That's where they feel comfortable, is your past 3 years of financial statements. And it can be hard for an owner who knows they're killing it this year to potentially be declined because of past year performance. Part of that, and I'll get into that a little more on the next slide, can be because of a financial statement quality. When you're looking at a year-end financial statement, whether it's a CPA audit prepared, reviewed statement, or tax returns, it's what the banks consider official. You have an outside firm saying these are accurate, or you're willing to put your name on those numbers going to the IRS, and it's tax fraud if they're not accurate. So, that's where banks feel comfortable, is looking at those official statements. And a year-to-date, a company-prepared statement, that feels a little to banks like stated income. They're easy to make up. There's no sure way to verify that they're accurate. So it's really important to have that mindset of being credit-worthy. They're really going to be looking at the year-end results as their primary focus. So going into the primary reasons, at least recently, that I'd say are happening, at least I'm experiencing, at my institution, City National Bank, and from 2017 to 2018, that can be one aspect. Maybe it's the statement quality. They may look good on the current statements, but really the year-end ones didn't look good. But a lot of it comes down to financial ratios. The primary ones that banks look at, I'd say, are debt service coverage is the most common. As the businesses get bigger, operating leverage ratios. And that's really just making sure both you have manageable debt as a whole that can be retired in a certain number of business cycles, but also that your cash in is greater than your cash out that's required to run your business.
A little louder. The mic is just for the cameras, so it's a little hard to hear you in the back room. It doesn't go to the room.
I apologize. Okay. And it's this, right?
Yeah, that's just for the camera, so the room doesn't, what you just have to.
Okay. Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
Good deal. So yeah, I mean, financial ratios in general are very important to a bank, and it really comes down to the debt terms you have versus the cash flow of your business over the past year. Some other reasons for declines, compliance, BSA is a big emphasis in banking these days. Banks are going to Google search you, they're going to do background searches, and they're going to look for character blemishes. So, they're very picky on that. I saw a deal decline for a woman who had a bankruptcy 15 years ago. If a bank approver sees something that they feel, feels like a character blemish, it can be that simple to turn down a loan. So it's a big thing to focus on. Your personal life can eventually impact the business for sure. And then just one other thing that came to mind is just not enough equity in a transaction. Typically, banks are going to require, depending on the collateral type that you're wanting to finance, a specific amount of cash equity that you've put into it. And sometimes you don't have that type of cash to meet the requirement at the time, and those are federally regulated. So you don't have, as a banker, you don't have the ability to go outside of some of these things. My particular bank, we get looked at by the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller, every year and a half. And they come in and they look at things according to the federal government standards, and if you're, not looking at it the same way, you get written up by them. So part of what's getting handed off to you guys as business owners and management is really coming down from, it's really a uniform way of looking at things that to some extent is outside a bank's control. So then this next topic, and I heard, I'll go through some of these in a little more detail, but some of these will kind of be a general theme from the conference today. Other people may be saying the same thing. For example, the fourth one on here was a diversity of sources, avoiding concentrations. It sounds like that's going to be covered fairly well, so I may glaze over that one a little more quickly. But starting with the first one, and these things are probably a little less common knowledge. Those reasons for decline, what will happen in the next recession is those reasons will increase. A bank's risk avoidance tolerance will heighten. So there will be a lot more reasons why they turn down loans. So, and some of these things take multiple years to really get ahead of. So the time is I'd say is always now to start doing these type of things. As far as the first one, how many people here are familiar with financial covenants when getting a loan? Some banks do it, some don't. But basically what they will do is those ratios that I alluded to, they may have a debt service coverage covenant on your loan. So that if, they'll define it according to accounting rules in your loan agreement, and there's a minimum amount, and if you don't pass it, technically it's an event of default. And what happened in the last recession is anytime there was an event of default, banks would pounce on it. Made a lot of hasty decisions where if they worked with customers a little bit more patiently, it would have been better for everybody. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And one of those things that can be an event of default is if there's financial covenants. So if you were to come across one of these as you're establishing a loan, I think it's important to build in some flexibility into that. They'll set a specific amount, and you can talk through what your performance is today. And this is where really you have to know your business in general. Maybe you have that key client that could be lost. How much realistically things could get worse in a down year, and kind of build that into your covenant amount. And work with your banker to say, hey, let's get that bar a little higher. I want to be safe.
Is the financial covenant gross revenue, profitability, dollars I have in your bank?
It's typically debt service coverage, operating leverage. So debt service coverage is going to be EBITDA. Really your your net income plus your non-cash expenses and your interest gets added back. But then on the bottom half of that ratio is going to be your required principal and interest payments in a year. So, you know, they're going to get a debt schedule from you and say, you know, you got to make this, and this loan payment, and this is your cash flow to support it. You know, and theoretically, to be able to pay your bills, that ratio has to be over 1. A lot of banks set the benchmark at 1.1, so you kind of got about a 10% cushion there. You know, but you know, keeping that as low as possible, you know, is helpful so that, you know, you don't run into a situation where, you know, it's a tight year. Maybe you do lose a little bit of cash, and all of a sudden you've defaulted on a loan. They can, you know, theoretically come and take the collateral, and, you know, freeze your bank accounts. It can get very difficult very quickly. So that's just something to bear in mind. As far as the capital expenditure cycle, you know, I think we all do, you know, in our own individual lives, separate from business. Like, you know, say a job's going well and we get a bonus, we get a surplus, we have, you know, a great project that goes through, we make some good money. We always have that option of, you know, maybe pay down credit card debt, you know, do some repairs on the home, or go on a nice vacation. You know, it really is the same thing in a business, just on a greater scale. I know the mindset of a lot of entrepreneurs is, you know, don't be afraid to take risks, you know, grow, and there's that fine balance of, you know, where growth can be too aggressive. You know, it strains cash, and then a recession hits, and, you know, you're not fully aware to absorb what changed. You know, I'm not going to tell you, you know, you know, every decision has to come down to you and your own risk tolerance. But what I can tell you is, from a bank perspective, those things are very, you know, very relevant. If you're looking at someone with, you know, fairly tight ratios, and they're going to double in size in the next 2 years, you know, you're really going to want to get in the weeds and see, you know, can they support their loan payments if everything doesn't go according to plan? You know, that they're going to build into their projections some sensitivity there. You know, what if, you know, a key customer were lost? Kind of down in the next one, you know, what's kind of your break-even cash flow? And in that regard, one thing you can do to help your businesses is look for ways to lower the fixed costs and make more of it variable based. And I put in there just the slide, just the one example of subcontracting. You know, if you have any amount of seasonality to your business where your employment needs could go up and down, a nice way to you know, avoid staffing people that aren't needed for the slow times is be able to outsource some of that work with subcontracting firms in the busier times. And that way, you know, if a client's lost and revenues go down, your expenses, you know, they'll go down as well. They won't be tied to that. You won't have to make the tough decisions for layoffs and those type of things. So as far as the diversity of clients, you know, that was kind of already mentioned. I'd say a bar I'm typically looking at when I'm speaking with business owners is kind of that first bar is any customer over maybe 10% of revenues. We want to hear a little bit of background, you know, how long you've done business with that customer. Once you start hitting like 20%, 30%, we'll start looking at contractual terms, you know, really, you know, getting a little more detailed in that. And it's not just customers, it's suppliers. It's if you have one, you know, one new project that's very large, a type of, you know, the ways you generate revenue. Maybe you have multiple faucets. Maybe you have one or two that, you know, could be subject to a new entrant coming in and you know, doing that better, and you know that goes away overnight. So there's a lot of different angles that you can be concentrated. You know, key employees is really a concentration there, where it may be, you know, a talent pool. So, you know, that's just something. The more you diversify, the better you're going to be able to absorb unexpected things in general. And then the last one's kind of along the same lines. It's look for ways to build up your cash reserves. You know, businesses fail because of cash, and one of the biggest strains on cash is growth. So it's that right balance of, you know, when to grow. It could be, you know, you may see a good opportunity in a new market and say, hey, I can take that, or I could stabilize this product line better, pay down a little debt here. Again, it's not always a black and white answer, but I can tell you from a banker's perspective, it could make the difference of getting a loan now and especially in a recession. So kind of just wanted to keep it high level for now, and then maybe just open it up to questions. And
I have a thought. Can you give an example the last year where the bank actually declined a company because of some of the weaknesses that you alluded to earlier? Can you give an example of something that was where you had an established company coming in and you had to say no?
Yeah. I mean, one thing I've definitely seen a lot of is a company that is going to be acquired, recently, established a new business line where it's kind of, they've projected what they're going to do with that. And they have cost in it, maybe they have a loan associated with it, but you're really relying on, it's a belief. You don't have that tangible result. So a lot of banks, if you are growing, if you're establishing new debt, if your costs have gone up, banks are going to want to see a multi-year period where, at least based on your financial statements, you could cover that if everything doesn't go according to plan. The examples I can think of are a lot of larger corporations. My role is more in corporate underwriting now, less on the small business side. So these are a lot of times leveraged buyouts where a private equity group comes in, levers them up, and puts it on the business to repay a lot of debt, and all of a sudden their leverage ratios don't look good. You could look back and they could be a very big, successful company for many years, but once you create that element of unknown, where it's kind of like your guess is as good as mine, what they do under, it's once you get that element of unknown, a lot of times will pass. And banking's very competitive right now. Everybody's looking for reasons to make loans right now. So if my institution passes on a deal, almost for sure likely someone else will do it. But what will happen in a recession, and what I experienced, is everybody starts shutting down. And people who kind of have any amount of vulnerability that need it the most are the ones who suffer in a recession.
What has your bank's experience been with approaching ESOPs and getting leveraged loans for an ESOP acquisition?
As far as ESOPs, you like the employees to have this feel like that, they're part of the company, that as the company succeeds, so do they. An ownership interest in it. We do non-recourse financing for larger institutions. So, if I were looking at an ESOP, if it were a company with $25 million in revenue and up, and I wouldn't have personal guarantees, it could be a plus. If it's a very small business with limited guarantees, you really want to find the material, a key owner, the most material operators, and have them personally guarantee the loan as well. And you could have an ESOP where they do that. So it's not something as much as it can be good or bad, but in general, having employees vested in the business and wanting it to succeed is a plus. As far as banks, a lot of times it comes down to their credit policy, and there's usually specific thresholds in which they'll require guarantees or not.
You referenced Google searches when they're evaluating and actually going in,
yeah.
and I think you made a note about personal character and so forth.
Yeah.
It's a serious question, but are they actually looking, going to social media, going that deep and looking into people?
They can. Yeah. I mean, I'm not. When I'm doing a search, it's funny. There's you can put specific language. Our bank has like a copy paste language where it's and fraud and crime and this, and then there's about 20 different terms. And if you put it with the right parentheses and this with a name, it'll search for all those specifically tied to that one person. So it comes back with, random news articles, blogs, lots of things, and it's up to us to kind of filter it. We're not going to take hearsay and decline a loan because that, a larger company that is going to obviously have, disputes that are subjective, that's different. But if you come across something where, it seems material, that it's almost a surefire way to turn it off. It comes down to if, that Facebook stuff is going to come up in a search or not. I haven't seen a lot of Facebook results, though, to be honest.
I just had a question because I know how you think. Not a lot of people raise their hand when you ask about financial covenants, and I think this is relevant for people that have, maybe loans from multiple people. Can you talk a little bit about cross default? Because I think that's something that's important for people to understand.
Yeah. So in your loan documents, what a bank will do is put a threshold that if you default with one lender, you actually default with them. And a lot of people, it's fine print. People don't always read this, but say you make a $200,000 loan with Bank A and an $800,000 loan with Bank B. And Bank B's wording, they've got some cross default language in there. If they find out you've defaulted on that small loan, they can put you in default on the loan of their institution. So it's important to know that having multiple banks as a source is a good thing, that diversification aspect. But the ability to totally separate yourself from that can come down to what's actually in the fine print.
Great question. And one other one that I think is relevant for talk a little bit about what our default rate is, and then how good our financial status is, and why it's good to think, obviously, like we think.
Yeah. So our default rate, it's funny, we have so few defaults right now. It's going back to the recession, you saw a lot more. I think we've had two or three of 200 customers established that in our particular division have defaults, and part of that's attributable to a good economy. Part of it's as a result of the last recession, banks kind of beefed up their analytical approach. There's a while where they're probably over the top. It's kind of come back down. It might be in a good midpoint right now. So part of that is it's on the underwriters and your credit personnel to ask the right questions and get behind trends and the detail. And that's fairly typical in banks, but it all can change.
Why would the bank want auto default language? I can't imagine that it's good for the bank to default a loan.
Yeah. And I haven't been in a workout situation, and I see the same thing. Realistically, it doesn't change a lot. In my opinion, it doesn't change a ton, but what happens is when there's default language, all of a sudden you control the situation. Banks like to get ahead of things, so they'll really put in the documents what they believe are kind of leading indicators of going out of business. Our legal team can take certain action if you're in default, but they can't take if you're not. Being able to get to your collateral, leverage a situation can be better in advance than when everything hit the fan. So it's really just designed to kind of be in control earlier rather than later. That's probably the best explanation I can give for why you'll have too much event of default language.
Just to give you a warning about myself, I don't have a filter. The underwriter guys, everybody here's dealt with the banks. You're like the guys that are behind the black veil,
Right.
And my fault with banks and my whole career has been that the underwriters are the guys that never come talk to the owners and stuff at all. They never have a conversation with them at all, and it's like y'all are just looking at the paperwork and there's blinders to everything else. I've shied away from big banks. You can ask him, I went to a small bank and there's 6 guys sit at a table and you're sitting across from them and they say yay or nay, and that's how it works.
Yeah.
And it's a what better way to do business. And now I'm in a position where I've outgrown my bank. My business, because, like they tell us, we shouldn't have 20% of our customers, any customer more than 10 or 20% of our business, and I'm at that point with my bank that I want to grow faster than they are grow, right? So I'm going to have to go back to the dreaded big bank. And matter of fact, they're underwriting today as we speak, you know, and it's something that just rubs me just bad. I mean,
I understand.
I can't stand it.
You know, I can tell you for Sean, I mean, he knows because he's a sales guy in my institution. I mean, every customer of his that brings in a loan, I ask the underwriter to have a conversation with, you know, the owner or the CFO and have a back and forth, not make a decision where, you know, there's a story behind the numbers. You know, and you'll get a lot of variance from bank to bank about how much they'll actually get in and try and understand it, or make these assembly line type decisions. And my opinion is, to compete as a bank, you're much better off getting to understand the whys behind the numbers, not just make decisions on the numbers. But
yeah, but it's funny you made the comment earlier, you know, they'll bend over backwards to give more money to people that don't need it, you know what I mean? And I left a bank particularly that treated me bad back when I was, you know, when things were bad and things were good, and they're calling up, hey, Don, we'll lend you money. I said,
right.
Not no more.
Yeah.
You know?
And it changes in a recession.
And they hate that, you know, because now they want our business, but they weren't there when I needed the help, you know.
Yeah.
American Express was.
Yeah. Last question, see if you had one.
2005, mortgage-backed securities.
Yeah.
Fast forward, student loan debt.
Right.
Can you comment on that?
Well, I mean, the rates are a lot higher.
Is that something that's trigger, or what can you?
Well, I mean, I'd say from my perspective, I mean, all I see with student loans is, you know, an annual payment that you're going to have to cover, and you're never going to be able to get out of it. I mean, I know the rates have gone up a lot higher. I mean, I remember paying mine off at like a 1% interest rate, and I have friends now paying 6%. So huge difference. You know, that's something that they'll consider it in your personal requirements. There's a couple angles bank look at your cash flow, and small businesses, besides the business's cash flow, they call it a global cash flow, and they really combine the personal income and debt of the owner along with the business, because as a business owner you can kind of move money to and from. You really kind of blend, and so then your student loan is no different than
The question is more directed toward, you know, more of a step back. Is this a potential recession trigger? Or, I mean, you see a vulnerability like the mortgage-backed securities, you know, out leverage us and cause the housing crisis. I'm asking you to
I don't presume enough to know about macroeconomics to really answer that. I mean, I would say in general, people straight out of college need help, not higher rates. So it's, you know, it's not, I don't view it as, I think it's worse as far as stimulating the economy. You know, like people straight out of college need the lower rates and help to get on their feet, and then they'll pay it back better later on. It's kind of like in a default situation, working with the customer, maybe, you know, easing the payments is better for your long-term return as a bank than immediately using the hammer. But that's, you know, from a total macroeconomic perspective, I wouldn't be able to really tell you.
Jeff, I just want to make one follow-up comment on the conversation you had on choosing your bank, because I think this is a very pertinent, and you could probably have a little more value on it, but choosing your bank is obviously important with how that relationship is, as we discussed here a little bit ago. But I think there's two questions you got to ask yourself in selecting a bank. Is that bank going to be there tomorrow? And there's two sides to that, right? Is it a small community bank that's primed for sale because times are great today, and then you're not going to be with that bank? And then are you, and loosely defined, a small player with a very large bank, and when times change tomorrow the other way, that bank's pulling out of you, right? So it's very important not only in your relationship, but is your bank the right fit? And that's a deep question to ask. But both of those events at the low end and the high end are occurring and are going to occur. So just something to keep you thinking about as you are making banking relationships.
That's a very intriguing point, because back in 09, 10, where you had everything, that's exactly what happened. You are absolutely correct. When you're thinking about your growth strategy and succession strategy,
if the bank is primed to be a takeover target, and there's going to be a whole nother set of criteria that the big mama or big papa bank is going to impose, which could cause your particular company and your particular industry to be, let's just say, allocated out of the portfolio. So it's really important. Good stuff. Thank you.
Okay, because we had a break earlier, we're going to run right into this next one, and it's called "What is Your Blue Ocean?" And our silver fox, RayWatson, is going to lead this with Ron Wilkinson and Eric Skolnik, and this is designed to be fairly interactive. So I would enjoy this because right after this, David Duda is going to actually take on this very topic and expand on it as it related specifically to his company. So, welcome RayWatson, the CEO Nexus.
Have a pointer on it?
Yeah, that's the right.
The red one, there's a pointer? Yeah, there we go.
Okay, hello. We've been hearing this morning about things that I think you need to be aware of to shore up your business. And I spend a lot of my time facilitating CEO groups. And we spend time on making sure that your core processes, your right people in your right seats, the data, the leading indicators are in place. Because that's the first step. Because if you've got a tight organization and a downturn comes, then you're going to be much better prepared to withstand that. But what we're going to talk about with Blue Ocean Strategy is how do we get outside of what we're actually doing today and become in that blue ocean. The book came out in 2005. I'm sure many of you have read it. And what it basically talks about is to take a look at what you're doing now and see if you can operate in an area that becomes the blue ocean and is not in the red ocean with the sharks. And we'll talk about some examples of this. But if you take a look at the slide up here, and I'll ask for a show of hands when we get a chance to look at that, is that where are you competing today? Are you in the blue ocean or are you in the red ocean with all the sharks? So if you look at this, you'll see that you're competing in existing market space. Whatever industry you're in, are you operating within the traditional confines of that industry? Are you out there to beat the competition? In other words, you're fighting against the competition. You're basically exploiting current demand. You're more of a market share. In other words, the industry is X and I'm getting so much of that industry. And you're making that value cost trade-off in terms of low price, value, etc. And are you making a differentiation in that? In terms, are you trying to be an innovative offering or are you competing on price? On the other side of it is to create an uncontested marketplace. And we'll see some examples of this. And the big thing is to make your competition irrelevant. It'd be great if we could do that. Yeah. And it is possible. But anyway, you can read the rest of that. But you can see basically you're either swimming in the red ocean with the sharks, or you've created an opportunity outside of the red ocean where you're not competing with everybody, and you've kind of created your own niche out there. So by a show of hands, how many people are currently operating in the blue ocean? Great, great. Because if you're in that blue ocean, you're differentiated yourself outside of what the traditional challenges are if you're operating in that with the sharks. So it's basically about not risk-taking, but to minimize the risk to your business. Let's look at some examples. And in your book, I noticed they came a little skewed. So So if you're following along in your book, you can kind of line those things up a little bit. But some of these are out of the book, and I'm going to give you a little more detail on them. But Circus Filet against primarily the traditional circuses. Yellowtail wine versus your traditional wines and outlets. Southwest Airlines. I remember I was living in Dallas in the early days of Southwest Airlines, and they certainly differentiated themselves. In fact, I just saw a survey that they were rated one of the highest customer satisfaction airlines out there. But I remember back when they were really starting out, and I flew a lot around in Texas, and they operated out of Love Field, where the other airlines operated out of DFW, which was a fairly new built airport at the time. If you went to DFW, they had to kind of take a lot of trams around to get from one terminal to the other, and you needed change. And so if you put $1 in to get change, you got 95 cents back. If you happened to get change at Love Field, where Southwest operated, you got $1.05 back. And so they made airline travel fun. There was unlimited cocktails flying between Dallas and Houston, or particularly so if you got on a flight coming back from Lubbock into Dallas, you know, the booze was free. So they did a lot of things that really built the fun part. It made flying fun, and they differentiated themselves from the other traditional airlines. Uber, Lyft. I mean, look what's happened. I mean, if you own a taxi medallion in New York City that you paid $1 million for, it is absolutely worthless today. I don't know if there's anybody here from Mears, but Mears was looking to expand significantly. They didn't, because Uber came along. So same with Airbnb, and obviously with Apple. Remember when we had to listen to every voicemail to answer, and then Apple comes along and we can select those that we want to look at or that we want to respond to. This is a busy chart, and I'll kind of take you through a little bit of it. Let me step out of the way. What this is the chart that kind of looks, that Circus Filet utilized to kind of look at how do we get into the blue ocean. So the bottom part here, right here, is basically we want to reinvent the circus. Now, back in the early days with Ringling Brothers, this thing's not pointing well here, but there we go. I remember as a kid growing up in Melbourne over here, the circus would come to town. Ringling Brothers or some of the other circuses, and it was a big event. Free-range circus outside, lion tamers, all this sort of stuff. But if you look in there at the red ocean that they were competing in at the time against their competitors, they had to have star performers. Now, those with gray hair like me might remember Emmett Kelly, who was a well-known clown with Ringling Brothers. And he was a star performer, as were some of the high wire acts that they had. They had concessions, much like you have at football games now, fun and humor with the clowns, and you know, the thrill and dangers with the lion tamers and the aerial acrobatics. But that was as it is. Here comes Circus Filet along, and they said, what can we do differently to look at that market and get into the blue ocean? So what they look at, what to be, not as is. And I guess that's a key word as I'm looking, as you go back to your offices and think about where you need to go, think about where you need to be, not where just you are. So if you look at the overlay there, and I'm going to go to the next slide to get a little more detail, the middle thing here is just a bunch of metrics that they utilized, leading indicators, KPIs, whatever you want to call them, that they utilized. But let's go, and remember right here is we want to reinvent the circus. So you'll see this slide a few times with some of the other examples. But remember those words on the top as you're looking at your own blue ocean potential strategy. To eliminate, reduce, raise, and create to swim out into that blue ocean. So if you'll see, the red lines were Ringling Brothers, Barnum & Bailey, and the other traditional circus operators. And if you'll see along the bottom here is the various things. So if we look at eliminate, but they said, let's eliminate star performers. In fact, Eric, I think, told me the other day that most of the people in Circus du Soleil are Olympians, gymnasts. Not necessarily the top tier, but gymnasts that they brought in. So not star named performers. They did away with the animal shows. I think PETA might have had a little something to do with that, because there was a lot of, obviously, the way the animals were kept and trained. No aisle concessions, and no more the train or the 18-wheelers pulling in and setting up these tents. I know they kind of migrated more to facilities to do the circus, but at one time, you know, the trucks would roll into town and the big top would go up, and but that was expensive. So they looked at a lot of costs here. They wanted to reduce, but not eliminate, the fun and humor and the thrills and danger. But what they did want to do is a unique venue, a theme, and artistic music and dance. And they also got a good price. So that was the value canvas that Circus du Soleil looked at against who their competition was, which was traditional circuses. And I think we can see that they've been highly successful. Another one is Yellowtail Wine. Again, these are, if you haven't read the book, get the book, and it gives a little more detailed information on this. But this is just another example of how somebody, we're not talking technology here, we're just talking about a different focus as to how they addressed a traditional market. So Yellowtail Wine, you may recall, if you've ever been to a 7-Eleven or a convenience store, you got Yellowtail Wine there. So what did they do? Let me go to the next slide, I think. So in the Rays area, the price is up a little bit over your budget wines. They eliminated a lot of the mystique about wine. In other words, bouquet and all this stuff, and they eliminated the push on vineyards. In other words, they took wine down to the common person. That's why they started going into convenience stores. They were going after the beer drinkers. They were going after the people that were going into the 7-Elevens or what have you, and on the way out you could see Yellowtail Wine. They only had two flavors, or two. They had white and they had red. Yellowtail Wine is an Australian vineyard. So down here, you notice they took away, whoops, I did something here and just blew this away. You know what I'm going to get this back?
Just another
Oh, there we go, okay, easy enough. So down here on the reduced, the prestige of wine was taken away. The wine complexity and the wine range was taken away. They created easy drinking, easy selection. You only had two choices. And Yellowtail Wine has become, and is very successful, but they looked at the marketplace of wine as being crowded and complex. And they wanted to rise against the Mad Dog 2020s of the world, but still wanted to offer a quality wine, but below the traditional wines. And they found that niche, and they got into the blue ocean in a very crowded, established marketplace. McDonald's had no idea about blue ocean strategy back when they got together, when Ray Kroc got with the McDonald brothers and started McDonald's. Now, whether they went through this process or not, I don't know. But the process that they consciously went through the process. But if you look at this, they were competing back then with kind of the local store, the local restaurants. I think, does anybody remember Howard Johnson's? They don't exist anymore. But Howard Johnson's was out there at the time. They were kind of the Denny's, I guess, of the time. But if you look at what McDonald's did, and if you look through that, put it into that reduce, create, eliminate model that I'm talking about, they got rid of waiters, table settings, and menu selections. That was costly in those traditional restaurants. They became everywhere. They were seen. You can't go anywhere without seeing a McDonald's. And they looked at speed, quality, kid-friendly, and maintained a relative price. But they looked at the marketplace as it was, and they visioned where it needs to be. And that's how McDonald's launched. Now, obviously, another good point is that you don't get in the blue ocean and just stay there. You've got to innovate and continue to look at maintaining that blue ocean ability because as we saw with Apple, once Google got into the game, Apple didn't quite have that blue ocean to itself in some of these other things that you'll see. So you have to continue to innovate. And again, I want to re-emphasize, shore up your current operation, but make sure you're spending some time thinking about how to move beyond where I am today. This is a mind map, and again, I'll let you explore that more in your handout, but this is just a lot of questions, a lot of things to stimulate your thinking with you and your leadership team about how to look at a blue ocean. For example, again, the reduce, eliminate, create, and raise. How is your industry operating today? What can you eliminate from that? What can you create? What can you reduce? What can you save? And so that you're, yes ma'am.
You brought up an interesting point when you were talking about McDonald's, because I don't know how many people here know McDonald's owners, but one of the problems they're having right now is that they are losing their market share and they don't know how to innovate, even when they get together. So my question always is, if you're sitting there with your best team that you have available on the national level and on your regional level, and you all are still having issues, what do you do? Hire somebody on the outside, get a medium?
I guess if I had the answer to that, that'd be a big demand. But basically, I think what happens is, and we've seen it over and over again, is that businesses start to rest on their laurels. In other words, you've got success. You've got, you're building your brand, you're known. Well, there's somebody else coming in behind you that's going to do the same thing in terms of how do we get out in front of you. I read an article somewhere in the last week or so. It said that somewhere, somebody in the world is coming up with an idea that will put you out of business. Mm-hmm. So you got to think about that. And so McDonald's went to sleep at the switch a little bit, and some of these other players got into the game and surpassed them in some of the blue ocean stuff that they used or did them one up. So again, the example of Apple. Having all the market share in a smartphone to losing it to some competitors. So if you get out there, you got to stay out there, and you're not going to stay out there if you don't continue to innovate. Again, the idea is you're probably spending, probably close to 100% of your time in your businesses dealing with business issues. You come into work in the morning and you've got distractions and interruptions, and you've got customer problems, and you've got this and that and the other thing. But you've got to take time to kind of think about outside of what you're doing so that you can continue to innovate in a market where you are. And again, it does not have to be technology based. It can be marketing based. It can be looking at within your traditional customer base and how can I expand that. Based on my core competences that I have in my organization, what other things can I provide to the customers I already have to expand that base and stay alert and sharp as far as the competition goes. So I'm not going to go through all that, look at it in your book, but it's just kind of thought provokers in terms of a mind map in thinking about the blue ocean. So value innovation. Again, we don't want to just have a low price or an innovation. We want to have an innovation with a low price because we brought efficiencies into what we're doing. So I'll just read this to you, but value innovation places equal emphasis on value, price, or perceived value, which comes from price, and innovation. Value innovation is a new way of thinking about and executing strategy that results in the creation of a blue ocean. The creation of blue oceans is about driving costs down while simultaneously driving value up for buyers. They're not exclusive, they are combined. Remember that slide before, it's not about risk taking, it's about risk avoidance. And if you think through this, it's possible. So that's a good slide to take a look at as kind of guide your thinking. 6 principles of blue ocean, just in the potential risks to think through. I think number 5 there is an interesting one because like anything that you're doing in your organization, you've got to have buy-in. You've got to have a culture that buys into what you're doing so that you're not just leading the charge and nobody's following. So you got to build that culture of innovation and get teamwork and get everybody bought into what you're doing. But again, a lot of this is brought out in much more detail in the book. So if you haven't read the book, get the book and go through it. And then it's mentioning the various risks associated with some of these strategies. So what I would say, here's your homework. Here's your agenda. When you get back and you get your leadership team together, is just kind of go through some of that. Number 1, understand what blue ocean means, and a blue ocean is a term out of the book. What it really means is I'm going to innovate beyond where I currently am. I'm going to take my core competences and my people and my technology and move it out beyond where I'm currently operating. And think about ways and means in which I can deliver outside of what I'm doing and what my competition may be doing, so that you then make competition somewhat irrelevant. But again, you can't go to sleep. Once you do it, you got to keep doing it. So if you create a culture of innovation in blue ocean, then you can perpetuate that. But it's got to be part of your culture. So I think you've got the handouts in the book, and you can follow that.
I can't read that. Can anybody else read that in the book?
Can you read it in the book? It's pretty much that.
Okay.
Just kind of shown in an agenda format. So, any questions on this before I bring up Eric? So, a couple of you say you're in the blue ocean. So reevaluating really in the blue ocean, and the way to measure that is, have you made competition irrelevant? So what I want to do now is bring up Eric Skolnik, because he is an example of having created locally, local guy, creating a blue ocean strategy in a very crowded marketplace, which is insurance and employee benefits. So Eric?
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir.
All of our information is in the back, so if you need us to email you anything, just email one of us and we can get it to you ASAP.
Nicole, you're the best.
I love you, Eric. Forever.
My name is Eric Skolnik. Thanks for having me here. And I always tell people, and how many are college football fans? Okay, quite a few of you. I'm not an LSU fan. Okay, it's just a purple. It's not a purple. It's purple tie because my wife loves purple. All right. So appreciate you having me. I always tell people, and I have 2 adopted kids, 6, and every day when I see them off to school, I say learn something new. And that's how I live every day. So I always tell people you don't know where you're going until you know where you are. All right. And so my consulting firm, what we do is we come in, got an engineering background, and spoke to a bunch of engineers over here, and we've got a process of how we help people. Okay. What's your number 1 expense within your organizations? Payroll. What's your number 2 expense? benefits, right? So you got to control them. How many had double-digit increases this past year? Quite a few, right? Okay, so where are you? Health industry, Affordable Care Act. Is it affordable? It's not. It's a train wreck. All right? I live it every day. Okay? I used to be 6'4". I get beat down every day. All right? I used to be as tall as you. All right? Not anymore. All right? So what happens is you're dealing with these increases, so you have to deal with the structure of a company. How many of you are familiar with what a PEO is? Leased employees, right? All right? But there's also a hybrid called an HRO. Okay? Human resource outsourcing. There's also an HRIS model, Human Resource Information Systems. Okay? And also, the name of my company, Strategic Partners, there's numerous folks in here that help me. Okay? 4 years ago, I had all these companies coming to me wanting to buy my company. I sat down with Ray and a bunch of other CEOs, and people were just throwing daggers at me. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? I didn't sell. One of the best decisions I made. Okay? Also, gentleman right here, Mike Pesci. Okay? He's an HR consultant. He works with one of my international clients, helping out on HR consulting. Another one of my clients, here locally. They're a telemarketing company. All right? They need, and because of how they're contracted, guess who I work with? Nicole McMurray. Okay? And they're now one of her top clients because she's helping staffing them. Okay? I help people go into and out of PEOs. Well, guess what? If you're doing that, you're making a cost-effective model for them. Sometimes you need to have people, right? Nicole just helped me place a person that went into the company, and now we're assisting on what's called a PEO takeaway. Okay? It's going to put them in a better situation. Okay? National trend is 12%. That means if we group the entire United States together, everybody's getting a 12% increase. I'll tell you what, did you get a 12% raise last year? No. It's unsustainable, all right? So how can you address this? Okay? I just worked with a client, and I put them on a 2-year plan. We're into their 3rd year. Over a 2-year period, we saved them $1.2 million. They're over in Titusville. They're headquartered over there, right around 200 employees. Saved them a boatload of money. Guess what? We're back. Already did the mid-year review with them. Went through everything. They're back at double digits again. So guess what I have to do? The shell game. I got to work with the designs. I got to work with the specs. Put those other things all together to try to make it cost-effective for them. Their employees aren't getting double-digit increases. Another client, telemarketing company here in town. They just got a 58% increase. Okay, it's the worst one I've seen in 8 years, and they're like 150 employees. It was a total train wreck. I'm going in, CEO, the controller, they're all over me. Okay, I had to take them back into a PEO. We saved them $369,000, got them better plans. Okay, but it's a shell game, right? Got a technical background. I'm blessed. Nicole knows many of my colleagues, as does Craig, and I'll touch base with you in a second. But I'm blessed because they're all smarter than I am. And I tell them they make me taller, faster, better looking, and I go, they have to work overtime to do that. So that client, we just helped them out, restructured all the benefits. There's a, here in town, they're a medical imaging company, and like 160 employees, and they had a 35.1% increase last year. And they're all ex-GTE folks, and I got shredded. And I was able to get it down with the current carrier down to a 12% renewal, and the CEO looked at me and he goes, unacceptable. And I go, well, can I tweak the plans a little bit because they have really rich plans? He said, absolutely not. You're not messing with my employees' benefits. So we had to rework everything, switched everything. I bundled it all together, put it with Cigna, got them down to a 2% increase, better benefits. Plus, I put them on a level funded plan. Okay? So, 8 years ago, I was brought into a client, and a few of the folks that I work with are not in here today, but why I'm called Strategic Partners is because I have folks that help me out with staffing, folks that help me out with individual plans, HR consulting, business consulting. Other folks that aren't in here are payroll folks, work comp. Okay, you can't be everything to everybody, right? But if you surround yourself with the right people, the strategic partners, you can help people. That's what we do. I was brought into a client, they're a national ministry, 8 years ago. And I was brought in by ADP, and they said, hey, help us fix this client. They're broken. They had like 183 employees. They're not-for-profit, okay? They don't have huge increases and huge bonuses and that type of stuff. And I was brought in, did a PEO takeaway, saved them right around $400,000. CFO, every time she sees me, I get a hug and a kiss. All right? And by the way, once I explained to you what we did for them and how we created our blue ocean, which blue's my favorite color, that's why, I go that route. But anyhow, so we saved them and helped them, all right? But this was right when the Affordable Care Act was all going on, right? And, I call it the boiling frog effect, We all know you put a frog in water and you start heating it up. Well, that's what happened with the Affordable Care Act, right? Well, all these folks, it's really expensive and it's adding up. Well, this is a national ministry. How many of you are familiar with sharing ministries and know what that is? Okay? Handful of you? Okay? It's based upon the Bible. Okay? And it states, for the body does not consist of one member, but of many. And so, if we can all come together to assist, and I pray every day, and I always say, one of the things I always say is, God grant me serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage of things that seems I can, all right? And the thing is, I saw this, the executives came to me, and they're like, we're broken. And I said, oh yeah, you are. And they're sharing ministry. There's 5 of them nationally, okay? And what happened is the federal government gave them an exemption, okay? They're not an insurance company, but if we had all of us in this room and we were one company, people talk about self-funded plans, partially self-funded plans, level-funded plans, fully insured. That's what we do, right? Well, if we had all of us together, we all have different backgrounds, different health issues, things that are going on. I have 2 adopted 6-year-olds. My son has seizure issues, so there's all different types of things. But if you group us all together, and you can pay in and then pay out to assist each other, that's what happens within a sharing ministry. But you know what happened? They were on a fully insured plan. They're getting double-digit increases. And I'm talking, this is back when the carriers were hammering people with 70% increases, 60% increases. And they came to me and they said, Eric, it's unsustainable. We can't do this. Can you help us? I said, let me figure it out. It took me about 2 years. And what I did is I designed what they're not, okay? They're not preventative care. They're not RX. They're not dental. They're not vision. They're not life insurance. They're not disability. So I designed around it. And then what I did is we put it together. And again, this is why the CFO really likes me. They've not had an increase going on 5 years now. Okay? How we structured things. They've had no increases. So then what happened, and I like to say it was my idea, it wasn't. Their director of program development came to me about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, said, you've saved us so much money and put us in such a better situation. Remember I told you they had the federal exemption? Individuals had the federal exemption. Their lobbyists up in DC, oopsie, guess what he forgot? He didn't take care of the organizations. So if you're a religious school, a church, or some type of religious organization, you didn't get the exemption. You were still mandated by the Affordable Care Act. How can you get around that? Remember, I said we solved problems, we mitigated the risk. So what I did is I designed around it. Again, it took me about 1.5 years, 2 years, and we launched it. And we call it Christian Benefit Solutions. And Craig right here, if you guys don't know Craig, I call him the tallest man in the insurance business. But when it comes to individual plans, those type of things, he tied in and helped us out, okay? Last year, because it was growing so quickly, I needed help. Guess who helped me hire the person? Nicole. It's growing right now, quicker. We've closed over 40 groups. We launched it right at the end of Q4 last year, and we closed 40 groups. Earlier, Eric and everybody else was saying, what's your sales cycle? My traditional side of the business, my typical sales cycle, correct? You know this. It's about 2 years, 3 years. Because I tell people, whether it's love, business, or sports, it's all timing. You need to be right in the right place at the right time to be able to assist people and put them in a better situation. All right? So what we did is we put the preventative care, the RX, the medical coverage, which, by the way, is the sharing ministry. And there's 5 of them. We can work with all 5. And we're asked that all the time. So we can plug and play, and then we put everything else around it. So when you're at your corporation right now, how many have medical insurance in here? Almost everybody, right? Do you have life insurance, dental, vision? But not everybody all has the same, right? We create options for you so you can go ahead and pick and choose what's best for you and your family. And my thing is, I always tell every one of my clients, be an informed consumer. And a few weeks ago, and those that go on meetings with me a lot, we always have pre-meetings and post-meetings for a review. And one of my colleagues last week said, he goes, Eric, you're not a sales guy. And he goes, I love you. He goes, you're an architect, but you're not a sales guy. And I hugged him. I said, you know something? You're right. We solve problems. And we lay it out. What's your goal? What's your objectives? What are your challenges? Okay? So we've now created this. This is our blue ocean. The sales cycle, depending on the size of the organization, is much shorter. As I mentioned, we've already closed over and assisted 40 organizations since January. Now, how many are aware that with President Trump, he's saying, hey, can we go towards associations? That's what this is. This is Association of Churches. It's tied in with it. So the next step of this as well is we're tying it in with the small organizations and the large organizations, and that's the blue ocean that we've created. So, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
And how do you determine, when you're talking about the benefits, that when we talk about medical coverage, that they're covering the physicians that, or the physicians are a member of the plan that they're going to, or the pharmaceuticals that they should be using, and not the PBMs that they're rebates on?
Mm-hmm.
Those are huge parts of the cost of medical care.
Correct.
And how do you deal with it?
How do you deal with it is, again, you create options, because take a look out the parking lot. Does everybody drive a black truck? I drive a silver sedan. You create options for them. Okay, so what we did is we created like a base plan, and then a buy-up plan, and then also the network that this is designed on. It's the second largest network in the nation. Okay, but also if a doctor, and you can't force a doctor to be in a network. There's numerous doctors, because of the Affordable Care Act and because of the cost cutting and everything, they went to what they call concierge service. They don't even take insurance. So it comes down to you, again, being an informed consumer. Me, years ago, I had to have sinus surgery, all right? And I have to do a flush every day, a Zyrtec and all that. It's all because of allergies. Well, I go to Walgreens. Ask, be an informed consumer, what's my best way to get this drug? Believe it or not, my insurance didn't cover as much as a Walgreens discount card did. Okay? You can go to GoodRx online. Be an informed consumer. Okay? Did that help?
I've been in the industry for over 50 years. So,
Okay.
you know, I deal with this on a daily basis. People who have chronic diseases, who are really critically ill.
Right.
And dealing with some of these things is a real, sometimes a challenge for them, because then they go into Medicaid, and then it's managed Medicaid, and the only thing they do is they manage access.
Medicaid, Medicare, personal lines guru, right here. So when it comes to all that, just so you know, strategic partner, that's who I go to. All right. There's another question over here. Okay. Okay.
Great job.
Thank you very much. And Nicole, thanks for not picking on me. I'm going to introduce Ron Wilkinson. Ron Wilkinson, when I asked him the other day, I go, how many years have you been in the industry? And he said 200 and something. All right. But what we just did, and Ray got us all teed up. Ron's going to come up. He's with In Perspective Financial Services. And there's a right way and a wrong way to do things, right? We were just talking about the blue ocean and creating your blue ocean. I know numerous of you put your hands up, you're creating your blue ocean. Ron's going to talk about some of the situations that he was with organizations and assisting them to try to help them find that and navigate their blue ocean. Okay, Ron?
Thank you very much. Go ahead, I'll let you hook me up. Thank you. You want to just hold that and stand there?
Yeah, you got it. There you go. I just put it in my pocket.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I am going to try to move this along because I know that we're a little bit behind and everybody's got things to do. So, I'm actually going to talk about, 10 or 12 years ago, I met a man here in Orlando who became a mentor of mine. He convinced me that being a consultant was a lot more fun, and he was right, than being a CFO for just one company. And so I have followed him for many, many years, and he taught me a lot of things. He was an amazing guy. He was single-handedly responsible for Starbucks moving across the country from the West Coast to the East Coast. He helped Barney's Coffee grow from nothing to amazing. He worked with Blockbuster. He worked with a lot of different companies. And I called him and I said, give me an example of a company that you worked with that should have followed a Blue Ocean strategy, could have followed a Blue Ocean strategy, and didn't, and subsequently failed. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today. Rather than use experiences in companies where I work, I thought this would be more interesting because everybody could relate to, well, Blockbuster. So could a Blue Ocean strategy have saved Blockbuster? He worked with Wayne Huizenga for many, many years and counseled him, and, well, Wayne listened sometimes and other times not so much. Blockbuster opened its first store in 1985, grew to well over 5,000 retail stores and over 60,000 employees, and their revenues were amazing. This is back, of course, when, those of you who remember the VHS tapes, if you tried to go buy one in the store for your favorite movie, I remember buying Star Wars, the original Star Wars movie. I paid like $80 for it, and I thought I had gotten a bargain. I still have it. I don't ever use it. I can't use it. I have no VHS. I've got no VCR. You can't throw it away for $80.
I'll take it. I have a VHR.
In 1997, okay, so Blockbuster now is operating, it's doing great things. In 1997, a young man went to Blockbuster to rent a movie. He rented Apollo 13. Forgot to bring it back and then lost it. Blockbuster charged him $40. He got upset. He said, this can't be. By the way, late fees were one of the main ways that Blockbuster made its money. In fact, it was a crucial piece of their strategy. Reed Hastings said, I'm not going to do this. And so he created Netflix. Netflix was born. But if this was his Blue Ocean strategy, although I'm sure he didn't call it that, he did it with no new technology, but yet a new business model. It was the same stuff. It's just, how is he going to deliver to the customer? And you all know what Netflix started out as originally. It was a mail order business. But he started to eat into the competition. So 3 years later, in the year 2000, he's the little guy on the left, and he goes to Blockbuster, who at this point is a pretty big giant, and says, I think I'd like for you to buy me, or I'd like to partner with you or something. John Antioco, who at the time was the CEO, one of a long line of CEOs that had come and gone to Blockbuster, said, now we like our brick and mortar. This is the way of the future. Take your ideas and see you later. His first mistake. There was a Blue Ocean staring him in the face. He said goodbye. In the year 2007, Netflix starts its streaming service. What Antioco didn't see, he wasn't looking around him at what technology was bringing to our country. He didn't see the opportunities and the necessary paths that we were going to go down. And he sat back on his heels, and in 2007, when this happened, again, they ignored it. They really didn't do anything. And by the way, prior to this, in the year 2002, it's not going to be up on the screen, Redbox started its business. And as you know, Redbox was actually, McDonald's funded Redbox. McDonald's was the one that financially backed Redbox, and for its first year, all Redbox did was sell products and little food bits and things. It was called something different. But after a year or so, McDonald's said, you know, we don't want these in our stores anymore. So Greg, can't think of his last name now, but the guy that founded Redbox, he decided that he was going to put DVDs in his machines, and he started putting them, well, the places that you know, and he became a competitor. So still, Blockbuster is doing the same thing they always did. Well, in the year 2010, 3 years later after that, Blockbuster could not handle the competition anymore. They filed bankruptcy, and they were on life support. And then from then until now, it was basically rest in peace. One by one, by the dozens and the hundreds, their stores closed. And I think there's one left now that's owned by Dish Network somewhere.
Alaska. And they're closing.
There you go.
We prolonged the death.
There you go. So many of you familiar with the story, clearly, what could they have done? What blue ocean strategies could they have employed? Well, many, because they didn't even have to think about them. They were happening. They presented themselves to Blockbuster. Redbox even went to Blockbuster at one point and said, please buy us, and they said no. They just weren't thinking ahead. They weren't doing what everyone today has been talking about up here, and that is examine your company, examine what you're doing, examine the landscape around you, watch the technologies. Where is it going, and how are you going to exploit those things to be different? What's your point of differentiation? What's your blue ocean? They could have looked outside their current business model for opportunities to innovate. Well, they didn't have to look far because they were coming to them, and they still said no. They had an opportunity to acquire Netflix and Redbox. Frankly, with the way they were operating, I think they might have killed Netflix. Now, something would have taken its place, but still, I like Netflix. I don't know about you guys. I'm glad it's still here. At one point in their history, they were actually when they first started, they were buying these VHS tapes for about $65 a piece. And so once they covered the cost of that, everything else was gravy. Entire stores, when they would open a store and they would bring in all of the assets, within the first month, everything was paid for. Everything was paid for. All the movies, the building, the land, everything. That's how much cash they were generating. But at some point along the way, they made a key mistake when a movie studio came to them and said, we want to institute a revenue sharing model. That way you won't have to come up with all this upfront money and pay $65 times however many tapes. We'll simply give you those tapes and we'll do a 60-40 revenue share. Well, Blockbuster thought that was the best thing since sliced bread, but it ended up being one of the things that killed them. In fact, at a shareholder meeting at Disney back in 1999, Michael Eisner stood up and said revenue sharing was the best thing we ever did for the Disney company. It's one of the largest revenue sources we have now. So clearly it was good for them, not so much for Blockbuster. Had they said no to revenue sharing, they could have built their cash reserves to a crazy amount of money and done almost anything they wanted to create their own strategies, their own streaming, which they could have done. Instead, they waited until 2009, and they were doing it through TiVo, and it was a mess. Too little, too late. They could have created their own programming content. They could have, would have, should have. They did none of the things that were presented to them. They did none of the things that were clearly in place or coming into place. And so this is what we all talk about. You talk about referral partners and things. That's what we do at End Perspective. We go in with referral partners. We help companies we help them find blue oceans. We help them fix issues that they have. We do the things that are important to help people see where they could go, how they can be more, how they can exploit holes in the marketplace and so forth. And if you're not thinking about what's coming next, you're already in the process of dying. And I'm not going to belabor that point because you've heard it 100 times today, but please think about your business as it stands, no matter how successful you are. You know, tomorrow's a whole brand new day, so what are you doing to prepare yourselves for the future? Find that blue ocean, find that point of differentiation, do it, exploit it, and be better than you are, and I hope to see you guys all survive the next recession. If anybody has any quick questions, do it. Otherwise, I'm going to sit down and let the program continue.
Good deal. Good job.
Family business, and now this is the I want to say, what is this, the third or the fourth generation? Fourth generation. I love family businesses that can get to the second and the third, and my God, the fourth. David Duda is the CEO of A. Duda & Sons, which is one of Florida's largest private employers. And he has got a great story to share about Blue Ocean. His company actually executed this, which is really cool. Love the simplicity of the ideas that have been talked about today. He's going to show it on a granular level how his company approaches. So please welcome David.
Thank you. Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. I do know some people in the audience here. RayWatson happens to be one of my next door neighbors. I also went to high school with this big tall fella in the middle here, Steve Kreitz. So it is a small world after all. So I was going to start a little bit with you in case anybody was not aware of what our company is or what it does. What the heck is Duda as a company? Well, we were founded in 1926 out in Oviedo as a celery farming company by my great-grandfather, Andrew Duda, and his 3 sons. Today, we've grown from a company that started with a 40-acre farm that could be plowed with 1 mule to a company that's $500 million in revenue annually, and we've got 4 primary lines of business now. First of all, we're still in the fresh fruit and vegetable business, which is what we started with, our legacy company, but we've added other aspects of agriculture, which I'll explain to you in a little bit. We have become a vertically integrated real estate developer and a home builder, and we also have diversified ourselves over the years to own commercial real estate. So we're a landlord as well. These are all the things that we tried to do to try to help diversify our business and survive all the ups and downs of the economy and agriculture. We are, you could say, we're in the business of providing 2 of the most basic of human needs, food and shelter. The third one is clothing, and I don't think we're going there. All right, so my particular background, I've been the president of the company since 2010. I am the first of the 4th generation of Dudas to actually manage the business. There were 45 kids in my generation of the family, in the Duda family, so it's not like it was just 2 or 3 of us to choose from. There are quite a few. So we have more than 25 family members that are working in the business today across the company. So family and business don't always mix, but when it does, it's a beautiful thing. My own background, I previously was various posts, the chief administrative officer, chief financial officer, the controller of the company, director of finance. I actually started out years ago after getting my MBA by working as a banker. You're hearing a common theme here. I was working for what's now Bank of America and did that for several years. So I've got a little bit of those scar tissues as well as some of the other folks in the room that way too. Now, Duda Farm Fresh Foods is our fresh fruit and vegetable company. That's what we started with many years ago and is still the biggest part of our business, about 60% of our revenues that way. Celery is still our biggest crop. It's our legacy crop, and this stuff here, if you've ever eaten celery before, the chances are you've eaten some of ours because we have more than a 35% national market share at the retail grocery level. There are 3 really big celery producers and a bunch of small ones, so chances are you've eaten some of ours. We have shipping points still in Florida, but our biggest shipping points for our vegetables and fruit is really now in California and Arizona. So we've had to migrate. We've had to actually pick up and follow to where the market is, to wherever's the best place to produce whatever it is. Or we would have, like Blockbuster, gone dark if we'd have just stuck to trying to farm celery in Central Florida, and that ship would have sunk a long time ago. Here's a fun fact for you. How much celery do we grow in a year? If you took all the celery stalks that we grow and you laid them end to end, they would go around the earth more than twice.
Wow.
The earth's about 25,000 miles in circumference, so that's more than 50,000 miles of celery that we grow in a year. Celery. Who the heck eats it? I'm sure glad somebody does, though, right?
How many acres is that?
I showed it. I can't really tell you how many acres. I'm trying to think of how many that is. We probably get about 1,500 cartons of celery out of an acre and about 30 stalks of celery in a carton. I can't do the math that quick in my head. We'll leave it at that.
So David, we've always heard that celery is a negative calorie thing because it takes more calories to burn than to actually do. How much energy can we generate for 2 trips around the earth?
An old wives' tale. There's no such thing as a negative calorie food, but just the same. Some of the other things that we do, radishes, we just seem to specialize in things that aren't exactly center of the plate for people. Radishes, sweet corn, lettuce, various kinds of lettuce, broccoli, cauliflower, and fresh cut celery sticks now too. We've got a high market share in that. Some of our biggest customers are Walmart, Costco, and Publix. So you can find these things right there. The second part of our business is Duda Ranches, which is an agriculture and land management company. The biggest part of that is oranges. We have more than 10,000 acres of orange groves, so we grow quite a few of those. We also have about 5,000 acres of sugar cane that we grow here in Florida, about 3,500 cows, so we're a cattle rancher as well, and we grow about 3,000 acres of sod or turf grass on top of that. Sod is an interesting business. I'll give you a little bit of background on that as we go along. What I will point out for you for the time being, I don't know if you can see it very well, but these are pallets of sod in the field, and you can see the remnants of little strips of sod in between them. So when you come through and cut the sod, you leave little bits of ribbons, we call them, in between. That's what grows back in about a year's time and becomes the next field of sod. Now, how you manage that is something we've had to perfect or get better at over the years in dealing with recessions. I'll get to that in a bit. And there's an old saying that if you're a Florida farmer for long enough, you become a real estate developer. It worked for us. It certainly did. The Vieira Company is our vertically integrated real estate development arm, and we're developing a master planned community in Brevard County between Cocoa Beach and Melbourne. It's right on I-95. It's called Vieira. It's being developed from an old cattle ranch that the family bought. This is fun too. It was more than 40,000 acres that was bought in the 1940s. You will cry when you hear that the first 25,000 acres of it were bought for $2.25 an acre. Wow. That's about $30 an acre in today's dollars. But at the time, as they said, the place was so wet that a cow couldn't find a dry place to lay down. So they had to, it was cheap for a reason, and there was no interstate system. Nobody knew there was going to be an interstate system. So the family, the new family decided on the name Vieira because it's a Slovak word. It's a word that means faith in the Slovak language. My great-grandfather had come over from Slovakia, what was the eastern part of Czechoslovakia, in 1909 to the United States, and so that's how we wanted to pay tribute to him. We started developing real estate in 1989 in Vieira. We now have more than 20,000 residents as part of this community. And we've got entitlements for another 40,000 more. So we've got a ways to go with that. Most of you are familiar with large community developments like the Villages. You know, the most successful master planned community in Florida. They're just a legend with that. But believe it or not, Vieira is actually in the top 25 of the master planned communities in the whole United States in terms of annual sales. So it's been quite a success to go along with that. And we added a home building company, the vertical construction component, back in 2005. We call that Vieira Builders. And we're finishing our fiscal year. We're a 1st of September to end of August year. We're going to have more than 320 homes that we're selling, that we've built and sold through Vieira Builders this year as well. And the last of the things that we've done to innovate or to diversify ourselves has been commercial real estate. We actually own more than 1 million square feet of commercial real estate space, more than 64 different properties in 16 different states. So we're not all in one spot either. More than $200 million worth of commercial real estate portfolio. Most of these are single tenant, and they're what we call triple net properties, which means that the tenant's not only responsible for the rent, but they also pay for the maintenance, the property insurance, and the taxes, the real estate taxes. That's what the phrase triple net means to the commercial real estate world. This has just been a great diversification tactic because whether it rains or whether it doesn't, whether the price of this or that is up or down, your tenant makes his payments. So some of our bigger tenants that we have are Walgreens, Flowers Foods, Dollar General, CVS, Advanced Auto Parts, Ruby Tuesdays, and Food Lion. So it's just kind of an eclectic mix of things, but there's some science behind all of that. So this is what you really wanted to hear, I guess, is so that's all fun, but what have you learned from being in business as a company for more than 90 years, and what lessons can you apply that are useful as you look forward to economic cycles and stuff? I'll start with some lessons from agriculture, and that is number one, agriculture, or let's say the profits from agriculture are cyclical, but food demand is not necessarily related to or correlated with the economic cycle. There are some things that are luxuries, like maybe avocado toast or lattes from Starbucks. Maybe I stopped preaching and started meddling there, I'm not sure. But some things are luxuries, but some are not. You have to eat healthy, whether there's a recession going on or not. So profits can be up, actually, during a recession, and they can be down even when the economy is going great. We're actually experiencing that right now because certain of our commodities are oversupplied at the moment, even though the economy is going great and people are all employed. They're not necessarily correlated. There are a few of our agricultural products, though, that are correlated to the business or economic cycle. And I mentioned sod earlier. That's one of them. And it's almost, really, it's a building material. Because if you don't have a sodded yard, if you don't have grass in your yard, you can't get a certificate of occupancy to sell a house. So sod is like shingles or anything else. It's a building material in many respects. And over a number of real estate cycles, over the many years we've been in the sod business since the 1970s, we've learned that you have to manage your inventories very carefully with sod to try to anticipate when is the economic cycle going to turn, or when do you have too much of it. And so one of the things that you can do is you can, I showed you the ribbons in the field before. One thing you can do if you're thinking that, boy, we're on a declining market, is just solid harvest. Don't leave ribbons. Just take all of the sod out of the field and fallow that piece of ground, or else put something else on it. So sod is an inventory management game, and it's different from some of the other aspects of agriculture for us that we've had to learn about. If you think about it, most of the time when you make a finished product and you put it in a warehouse, sod, though, when it's in the field and it's ready to sell, it's expensive because you have to keep on mowing it, fertilizing it, keeping the bugs out of it. And so the longer it sits, already ready to sell but not able to sell yet, it's just eating you alive. It's costing you money. So you want to, about as fast as you can get it ready where it'll hold together to sell it, that's when you want to harvest it if you can. So you have to manage your supply very carefully. Yes, ma'am.
Being a Vito person, telling you from church, we're always fascinated with what happens to Duda when we get the late Duda effect. What does that do to our sod farm there on Commercial Avenue?
We had about 4 inches of rain the other night, and we have a sod field in Oviedo that's about 100 acres or so, that all the water in the city, it seems, flows to there, and there's a temporary lake. That's a very small part of our sod business, and in about a week's time, the water gets out of there, and sod can be underwater for a few days, and it doesn't really hurt it much.
We wondered about that.
Yeah. No problem there. All right. Real estate was another area where we had some very distinct lessons that we've had to learn, because real estate, Florida real estate is cyclical, and it has some legendary boom and bust cycles. You know, there's no doubt of that. And there really is no recession-proof strategy to being a real estate developer in the state of Florida. There are some things that work and some things that work better or worse than others, but there's nothing that's recession-proof. One of the things that we learned in the last recession, which was the worst recession since the Great Depression, of course, so there are very distinct lessons from that. One of them was sticking to primary housing. Even during a recession, people do still need to raise their families. They still need a place. A good old-fashioned 4-bedroom house is still a basic need. But luxury homes or second homes, vacation homes or retiree homes, those are the sort of things that are a little more optional. And so the demand for those shuts off the fastest. So if you can stick to the center of the plate with homes that people still need, whether there's a recession or not, you're going to be better than some others. And so we have consciously tried to focus ourselves in that regard. Managing the inventories of finished lots is another thing. When the recession hit in 2008, we had about 800 single-family lots ready to have homes built on them. And that year, I think we sold 28 lots. So it looked like we had a lifetime supply of this at the time. So one of the things you have to figure out is the batches of inventory that you put in place. And so we've consciously done smaller subdivision phases. Steve's nodding his head as an engineer, he knows what I'm talking about here. You don't want to, it's cheaper by the dozen, right? It's always cheaper to go buy your rolls of toilet paper at Costco because you get a year's supply at a time, but on a per roll basis, it's really, really cheap. Except if you lose your job and you need cash and you stare at that mound of toilet paper in the garage all year and say, dang, I wish I hadn't spent all my money on that. So it's the same principle applied to real estate. So we build, instead of building hundreds of subdivision lots at a time and doing all the mass grading and the underground utilities and all that, you do it in a phase of 40 or 50 homes at a time. Now that's not always a profit maximizing strategy, but it is playing defense. When times are good, there's a tendency to want to pull the goalie out of the game, right? And let's all just keep attacking, except then you remember, oh yeah, you can get stuck with all of this and it can hurt you. So that's one of the things that we learned. We also used our own home building company. It was a great, it turned out to have been a great thing to have started that home building company just before the recession, because we were able to build homes on some of these lots that I told you we had 800 of, and it's easier to sell a finished house than it is a raw piece of dirt. No doubt, because you've got something that somebody can immediately move into and you have a different customer for that. So we used our home building company in some cases so we could recover the cash that we had put into the real estate by building a home on it, and then you can turn it over. And in some cases, we even took lots that you could have built a much bigger house on and put smaller homes because the demand was for a smaller home. So some people have got a little house and a great big piece of land around it, bigger than you would normally build necessarily, but that's what it took to work your way out of that kind of a situation. So these are lessons that, that stick with you. Now, recessions are not all bad. There is a silver lining to them, though, as well. And that is that you have sometimes the opportunity that otherwise wouldn't exist. One of the opportunities was to acquire talent. I told you about our home building company. Well, in 2008, just about every home builder in the state was looking for work. And so we were able to hire a lot of high-quality people that today are the core nucleus of the team that we have that's building homes and making profit for us today, because they were available and because we had diversified ourselves enough to be able to hire, and that's what people were looking for, was somebody who didn't cut and run. And home building's great, except when it isn't. They wanted somebody that they could count on would still be employing them at some point in the future. So that worked out well. And gosh, can you find bargains during a recession as well. I think at one point all of the Florida real estate, or all of the developed lots in the state, were selling at 10 cents on the dollar, right after the worst of the recession in 2008. When we weren't even sure when the banking system was going to exist anymore as we know it, land was incredibly cheap. And we, in some cases, were even able to take a piece of land that we had sold to somebody else when times were good, and we reacquired it for pennies on the dollar and put up our own product on it again. So again, there are opportunities as well as there are threats during a recession. And just in general, some financial things. Remember, I was trained as a banker. It's hard to beat that out of me. I've spent most of my adult life around either being on one side of the lender's table or as the borrower and thinking in those terms. So I heard some of I was able to listen in on some of the things Taylor had said earlier, and maybe this is redundant in some cases, but the first principle of investment in any business is diversification. I've mentioned to you that if we were still just a single celery farm in Central Florida, we would have gone dark a long time ago. If we had not diversified ourselves, we would be dead. That's true in your 401k. That's true in a business. You've got to have more than one way to make a profit. You've got to find ways to diversify yourself. We've diversified over the years with geography. We no longer are just in one place in Florida. We've done it with different product lines. We don't just grow celery, we grow lettuce, we grow radishes, we grow oranges, we grow lots of other things. So we've done it in lots of different ways, even different industries. There is a temptation to expand and Taylor was talking about it. Boy, when times are good, you want to, if a little's good, a lot's better. Let me take the next risk. Let's see how much bigger I can get, because somebody's probably whispering in your ear and saying, gosh, we made X this year. We could have made 2X if we were only bigger. So somebody's always nipping on you to say, why aren't we bigger? We missed a bet. We should have expanded. That may be true, but you do have to watch out. While times are good, you should be taking the opportunity to make sure that you are as secure as you can be for the next potential downturn that comes around. That includes things like paying down your debt, reducing your fixed expenses, making sure that you've got capacity in your balance sheet. Look, again, because you may want to go bargain hunting when times are not so good. So it's a good time to make sure that you get your house in order. Now, land is one of the most illiquid things you can ever own. And boy, is that a painful lesson during a recession. So you have to be especially careful if you're close to the real estate cycle that way. And real estate developers, I've known a lot of them. I am one in that respect. People who own real estate tend to think in terms of asset value. They tend to think in terms of collateral or loan to value. Well, I think my land is worth this. Surely a bank will lend me some fraction of that. Banks, on the other hand, think of three things in this order: cash flow, and cash flow. And you heard Taylor talking about that. What they're concerned about is, can you pay your bills later on? The bank doesn't want to take back the collateral. They never do. But they take collateral because that's smart. That's their safety net. But they're hoping, like you are, that this really acts like it's an unsecured loan. Look, they never really needed the collateral, that you were going to pay them back. So that's the way that they think, and it helps to put yourself in their shoes to really be prepared for that, and to avoid ever having to have that painful conversation with the special assets part of the bank. That's never any fun. So one thing I preach all the time within our organization, because of the lessons I've learned as an adult going through it, is that the cost of credit is not nearly as important to you as making sure you can get to it when you really need it. I don't mind paying a little bit more to somebody, whether it's a community bank or whether it's someone else. It's not necessarily the cheapest deal in town. The most important thing is knowing that you can still access it when you really need it. We've all heard the adage, the banker's the kind of fellow who will lend you an umbrella when it's sunny and want it back at the first sign of rain. And your job is to figure out, while times are good, who's going to behave that way or who's going to stick with you. You have to pick your financial partners really, really carefully, build up your relationship with them, build up the trust, and make sure that you're talking to the right people. And there are lots of cautionary tales with that, but that's just in general. The way that you can survive multiple cycles is you have to pick your financial partners carefully as you go along. And you have to look at how they've behaved in the past, how they're behaving with you while times are good. Anybody can lend you money when you never lose money. But who's going to treat you well or still give you the time of day when it isn't that way? So those are some of the lessons of having been in the agriculture and real estate side of things. I'd be happy to answer any questions. It's been a privilege to be with you, so we'll get started.
Do you have specific growth discipline, how fast you'll grow, or what you'll do? Is there a percentage you use? Is there to just keep yourself in the game?
I'm trying to think of how to answer your question in those terms. I have rarely seen us turn down an investment opportunity that had a good internal rate of return or net present value to it, but you can imagine that as diversified as we are in so many different lines of business, you can't say yes to everything. So we do have to try to prioritize, and that alone is one of the ways to do it. We do also benchmark ourselves against, we're big enough to benchmark ourselves against some public companies. Nope, there isn't a public company out there that's exactly like ours. There are some that have some aspects of it, and we have an annual valuation every year because of estate planning and other kinds of issues for the family aspect of it. So we know who really we resemble that's out there in the public arena, and we benchmark our return on assets to see how we're doing at the aggregate level. Are we actually performing as well as these other companies are? Yes, sir, in the back.
David, I've been in Florida since 1946. I'm sorry to admit. Actually, my dad used to hunt and fish in what's now Disney. But Duda is a company that I've never heard anything bad about. So I think that's a wonderful accolade for you folks. I would guess if you would address a little bit about how incredibly valuable relationships are with your vendors, your bankers, the people you do business with, in good times or bad times. How does that help you?
A couple of expressions come to mind. Number one, everybody dies famous in a small town, and we started out in a small town out in Oviedo, so everybody remembers everything about you. There's no doubt of that. And friends come and go, but enemies accumulate. So you have to be really careful about that as well. Paying attention to reputation, to having integrity in your conduct, to being ethical, to treating your employees well, all of these things are things that we do because it's part of who we are as a family. We believe in these things, but I will tell you they also do have a benefit from a doing business standpoint. That it's been very beneficial to us. We have a lot of very long-term employees that have stuck with us a long time, and that's very valuable. But doing what you say and meaning what you say and doing business in the community is important, and it really does pay off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, David, I found it coincidental when we were talking about you coming and talking, and I said I was going to give a talk on Blue Ocean strategy. And you said, oh, by the way, 5 or 6 years ago, my whole leadership team got involved with the book and used it. Why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, quite a few of us in the senior management team, there's about 8 or 9 that make up our really senior-most executive team. Most of us had read the Blue Ocean strategy book and could probably have quoted a fair number of the examples that Ray had pulled from the book. What was instructive to us was thinking about what can we do where other people can't? What advantages do we have other people can't follow? Celery was one of the 3 things. We did 3 things. We called them the 3 C's that were celery, citrus development, and community development, because we thought we had natural advantages that nobody else could do. We had natural advantages in celery because we actually grow our own proprietary seeds. We've done our own breeding of celery for years and years. We don't buy anybody else's seed. We grow our own, and nobody else uses ours. So we think we have natural advantages over the rest of the world in terms of how our varieties behave and how they do when there are bad elements of weather or otherwise. Citrus was a big opportunity for us because we have not been as badly affected as a lot of other people in the state with citrus greening. We're fortunate that we have some isolation with the land that we grow oranges on. And we have good neighbors. What little bit of citrus there is that's nearby us, they're good neighbors and do a good job of taking care of their trees to keep the pest out of there as well. So we thought we had some unique advantages. And then real estate is like the ultimate in terms of uniqueness. I mean, land is all about location, location, location. Somebody can't duplicate your location. They can build the exact same house on a different piece of land, but that land is not located right where you are. So we had some natural transportation and other advantages with developing Vieira that nobody else could have based on where it was right along the interstate. And so we decided we were going to press our advantages in those areas. So again, Blue Ocean kind of helped us to figure out, now that it's time to start trying to expand and grow again, where should we go and what should we do? The concept helped us quite a bit in trying to decide what should we be emphasizing.
You talked earlier about just the diversification process. So right now, if you look at your business and maybe there's one line that you're really invested in, how could you explore other opportunities? So can you share with the group and with me as well what it looks like when you decided to open up your building diversification or different crops? Who's involved in that decision-making process? How does it not disrupt your normal business? What does that decision-making look like?
I had flipped through the book that you have, and I saw that somebody had noted that you start with a bullet rather than a cannon shot, and I think that's very true. You usually start in some way by testing out the market with something. You don't suddenly decide to try something and bet the farm on it. So if we wanted to try growing a new crop of something, we would probably start with a test plot, or we would grow a few acres to see whether there's a market for it, or If we think we want to try growing, and we've done this recently, trying to see if we could grow celery outside of Florida. We went and looked at Georgia, we've looked at North Carolina. Well, you don't plant hundreds or thousands of acres of whatever it is because you can fall right on your nose with that in a big way. You start with a smaller batch or a test of something and see whether that's going to work. And if it does, that's when, like your folder says here, that's when you decide whether or not you really, how big of a cannon do you want to fire at it now? Well, you've proved it out. It makes sense. Yes?
David, you have how many employees today?
We have about 700 full-time employees, and about 300 of those roughly are salaried. The rest are full-time hourly workers for us.
Just a question on how your human resources team has utilized technology and other tools to support efficiency and compliance and communication throughout the organization. Just curious.
There is a natural tendency in a recession to start throwing things overboard that you think you can get by with without doing for a while. Training and employee development is one of those programs that often is the first thing that people say. The wheels won't fall off if we don't send our people to training for a year. And that happened to us too, like a lot of companies. And so I've had to work at trying to consciously go back and rebuild and put emphasis on human resources for us to try to beef back up and get where we ought to be with employee development since the recession. So that for us involved bringing in some talented people. We've gone back and rehired a full-time trainer or organizer of employee development programs. We've consciously invested in better payroll management and better human resource management software, because you only get so far with green eye shade type things. So we've invested in that to where we even have, the employees can access with a mobile app now. They can now see when their check or their pay has hit their bank account, those sorts of things, that they can do some basic management of things that way. So again, it was something we had to consciously remember that we need to be putting emphasis on this. And I had this conversation with Ray that I'm a financial capital guy from way back when. I've always been about the proper management of financial capital. But if you're really doing it right as a business, you're going to place as much emphasis on human capital as you do on financial capital, because you can't get anything important done without teams of people. It just can't be done. Individual effort is great, individual achievement is great, but if you want something really big done, it takes a team of people to do it. And if you don't place emphasis on developing your people so they can work effectively in teams, then you're not going to get a lot done, or you're going to be disappointed in what happens. So I've had to learn an old dog learning new tricks as I've gotten older here with that, and being responsible instead of being the CFO of the company, but now being the CEO. Don't forget, I have to think in terms of operations now and about human capital instead of just thinking about the financial side of things. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to piggyback on that. One of the thoughts that keeps popping into my head this morning across all the activities and the speakers that have presented is that within an organization, whether it's big or small, growth and challenging times, so not opposite of growth, causes just as much tension on both. So when things are going really well, there's a lot of tension in the office to make sure it stays that way and all the charts are going up, right? But when the company is struggling and sales are not coming through, or whatever other internal issues might be happening, there's just as much tension. So to you, with a company of 700, and to maybe some of the other speakers in the room, how do you continue to nurture and foster a culture of positivity during those moments of tension?
You've pointed out a really important part, and that is some people find it really easy to manage, or easier to manage, let's say, during a crisis. Because crisis management is great because it makes your decisions for you. What do I need to be focusing on? Obviously the bear that's right behind me, that's going to bite me behind if I don't stay ahead of him. Crisis management is easier for people, and some people find it necessary to create a crisis even if there isn't one, just so they know what to do every day. I think we all know people that way. I won't name them, but everybody knows somebody that way. The hardest part of management really is when times are good, is how you respond. What do you do next when you've had success? What's your next big thing? It's great to have set a goal and achieved it, but okay, now what do I do? And what's the next big thing? And that actually is the hardest part of it. And to some degree, I would say that in our organization right now, we're struggling with that a little bit, of trying to figure out what's our next big thing. Of course, we were, and then came the hurricane last year, and that created the crisis that told us what we needed to do for the next 12 months. But hopefully we'll get back on the track of, again, thinking, what do you do? Managing success is harder than managing failure in some respects. It's a different kind of challenge, that's for sure. There's no doubt of that.
Are you going to go, or are you looking at going into the medical marijuana business?
We are not. We have decided part of the mission statement of our company is that we grow healthy food products. So we've decided as a company founded in, as we are on Christian principles, that's something that we could do, but we're not going to do, because we've just decided that's something we're going to say no to. Yes?
I'm going to put you on the spot. In the last 10 years, where did the company fall? Was there any spot that really you wanted it to work and it didn't? And what has that done to help you get to?
Oh. Managing technology has been a challenge, and I think that's a universal thing for a lot of people. We still have aspects of our business that are running on a mainframe computer with software that we programmed ourselves beginning in the 1970s. One of the most painful things that we have had to do was to finally try to migrate that to a more modern technology. We decided to go with Microsoft Dynamics AX as our platform, to go from being mainframe-based to server-based with that. I didn't add, but the first job I actually had in the business once upon a time when I came back from being banking was I was dropped unceremoniously into our IT department and said, here, learn this. No one else in the family wants to know anything about it. So I have some experience with that, and I have had some responsibility for our IT department at one time or another, more or less over the last 30 years. It's painful, it's difficult to do it, and I wish I could say we had done a better job of it, but we have gotten there. For our largest line of business, the most complex thing we do is our fresh fruit and vegetable business. It's dealing with the large customers and such. When Walmart tells you how they're going to invoice you or how they want it to be, you don't get much opportunity to argue with them, even if you want to say, well, this is the way we want to do it, not if you want to sell to me. So we oftentimes are more or less dictated to about how we have to do things from a technology department with a lot of our customers in that line of business. A lot of moving parts in it, and that's the most difficult part, but we've gotten over the hump now with that one. So we've made progress with that. But I wish I could say we have done a better job of the project management of that. It's taken longer and cost more than we thought it would. Does that sound unusual to anybody who's ever done a technology upgrade? Because it is human nature, it is very difficult to manage that kind of a program or a transition. If I had it to do over again, I certainly wouldn't say that we wouldn't go through the journey. We still needed to, and I'm glad that we did, and we've been successful with it. I wish we had been a bit more efficient about how we managed it as we went. But we got done what we needed to get done, for sure. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Please eat more celery.
To a platform in a forum like this to share those pearls of wisdom, and I appreciate your last answer to the question about technology, because that, quite candidly, with all of our clients and a lot of the companies that we've been through, I'm the prodigy of an 80-year-old company myself, and having gone through having part of your books on software and part on the ledger sheets. It really hit home. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. We are at the end of this, and David will be around for just a few minutes. I encourage you all. One, I've got this little evaluation form, and I'm going to pass it around. I'd like you to take a couple of minutes, please, to give us your feedback.
we always look to tweak these things and make them very relevant. Also, if I move to here, I just want to speak to this. How many people are part of a CEO peer group? You know what that is? Well, a CEO Nexus is a partner with us, and essentially, and I want to say, I want to use this platform here to really advocate this. It's like a therapy group for CEOs, and if you have not taken the opportunity to join these are for second stage companies, you know, $2 to $50 million in size. It gives you a place to go so you don't feel alone, all right? And you engage in a lot of interesting dialogue to help you with the clanking of the gears as your business is growing, getting the perspective of everyone. Steve Quello and RayWatson run that here in Florida. So I encourage you to check that out. This is just a little thing. If you had some ideas that you wanted to put down on a piece of paper, here's a little worksheet for that. Those of you who did the assessment up front, and if any one of you have it, the assessment, if you would please leave it right at your place. As I said, we take the information from this and we share it with the college. Also, post-event, we actually give you a copy of your answers and we share that with you. We have a group that participates in that activity. At this point, just real quickly, I'd like to bring Nestor Hidayat back up here from Valencia College because we are really doing some big things going forward with the organization, CEO Leadership Forums, our sponsor members, and the college. And a few weeks back, actually a month ago now, it's hard to believe it's been that long, we met as a group to share some really fantastic news. And I'd like Nasser to share some of that, if you would.
Thank you, Jeff. First, let me thank David. I mean, I really learned a lot just listening to you, and you talk about human capital. And that's what Valencia is all about. Valencia is not about these beautiful buildings we have and all these wonderful campuses we have. It's all about students. Our faculty and staff believe in our mission, in our values, in our goals, and that is our students' success. And we have our students here, and they can vouch for that, that we believe that our mission is to make sure our students are successful. And how do we make that sure? Because we want to make sure that they are in the right place, in the right environment, and we provide all the services they need. And graduation is important to us, right? We want to make sure they're successful. So when we talk about human capital, it's investment and commitment. And when our students commit and make investment to come to college, to go through that expenses that they have, whether it's books that is not affordable anymore and paying for the college tuition, that's investment and that's commitment from them. We as a college, we make commitment to them, and that is to provide the right condition, the right place, environment for them to succeed. And I'm going to, I don't know if I should say, challenge all of you, and that is also you commit back, you make commitment to our students that their investment will pay off, and that is when they graduate, they stay here, they work here, because the data showed that the state college graduates, whether it's associate degree or baccalaureate degree, 95% of them stay here. They won't go anywhere. They stay in the community that is, live for years, and that's wonderful. So the relationship with CEO Leadership Forum, it couldn't be any better. I mean, Jeff has been my brother, but I tell him he's an older brother for a couple of years now, and we've done great things together. And last July 19, this is the event that we had, a breakfast event at our district office, where we had college leadership and the business leaders come together. And together, we made commitment to our student. And that is that if we make commitment together, our student will be successful. Our student will have the opportunity to graduate. And the surprise was we received a check, 2 separate checks, one for $50,000 investment for the scholarship and sponsoring students for the program that even doesn't exist yet. And that is our baccalaureate degree in software development. And they will talk about technology. Next year, we will have students that will pursue that degree. And so we will have graduates for all of you to hire. And the other one was CEO Leadership Forum. Thanks to Jeff and his hard work, we received a $100,000 scholarship for our students who are pursuing the baccalaureate degree in business. And commitment to make the college affordable. Valencia has committed that our baccalaureate degree, all 5 of them, soon to be 6, all of them, students have the opportunity to finish the entire 4 years, less than $10,000. And if that's our commitment, then I'm looking at all of you to help us together. We go through that journey and make it happen. So I want to thank Jeff and thank all of you for making it.
There's some wild things that are going on, and some of you I've shared these with. One of our very next efforts is to create a cooperative of small business owners in the different disciplines here that the college is offering, which lead to baccalaureate degrees, and actually give you a place to come directly to the college to get this young talent, okay? And what's interesting about Valencia talent is they're not just 18 to 22-year-olds. You know, you've got folks who are 40, 50. I met somebody at our breakfast who raised her daughter. Now she's back, and she's nationally known now for all the things she's doing in cybersecurity, and she's a graduate of Valencia. So, Florida small business, pay attention, because there's going to be some really interesting things that are going to be made available to each of you. We're going to be speaking to people on a regular basis. Part of the idea is to create an apprenticeship program for certain industries, okay, and develop curriculums very specific to the need, okay? Agriculture being one of them, hospitality and culinary being another, construction and engineering being another. There are these tracks that are really going to be guided by what will be a select group of 5 or 7 companies in each, right? And so everything about strategic partnership that Eric has shared, this is really what this is all about. So I want to encourage you to be engaged with this dialogue. It's exciting. It's moving at light speed. As an entrepreneur, that's the only speed that I know. But I'm excited about the future. We have a workshop at the end, in the fourth quarter on November 8th here. It will continue the theme of preparing for the next recession. As a matter of fact, the next 3 events going right into next May will be on that. We have a CEO social, which will be in downtown Orlando. I want to encourage you to participate in that. And then, if I can remember the very last thing here, I've got the feedback, and then at the back end of this, you see everybody's contact information. So you do see these cameras. I'm going to ask some of you to stay behind and share some of your perspectives that you heard here today. Okay, you got basically 3 cameras here where you can share some of your perspectives. I would really appreciate that. And thank you. Drive home safe. Your full name again?
Daryl Corbett.
Daryl Corbett. Okay.
J. James.
All right. I'm here with Daryl Corbett of J&J Waste Management, and he is actually freshly in from Australia, about actually no, it's the beginning of the year.
7 months.
Yeah, and he is running the new U.S. operations for his organization, and he came to Valencia College for our CEO Leadership Forums program. Share some of your perspectives and what you heard.
Well, Jeff, I didn't really know what to expect from here, but I've been pleasantly surprised with the amount of knowledge that's shown in the industry, in the group. As a new entry into the US market, it's been, I need as much knowledge as I can about the markets that I'm entering into, and to have these connections and the understanding of how a particular business enters the market. Very, very insightful today.
Yeah, because of course, trying to navigate business in another country is always a challenge. The big U.S. market's got a lot of its own landmines to deal with. What about as your company expands, how might Valencia College be a resource for you?
Well, as it so happens in Australia, we employ a lot of apprentices. We have a business traineeship program which we operate, and we apply to 10 different staff members every year, and they're educated with universities and colleges in Australia. So there'll be partnerships that develop as we grow into the business that we are in Australia. There will be plenty of opportunity for those sort of partnerships. One of the biggest things that we found challenging is understanding the legal system over here, tax law, all of those sort of banking law has been totally different for us, and there's been a lot of time, blood, sweat and tears gone into making sure that we're 100% compliant with everything. But we bring a different model. It's all about customer service, which all the waste companies provide a customer service level. We want to take it that next step up. So it's about bringing on board key people that are passionate about the environment, about education, and making sure that they want to be part of what is going to be a sensational business in the United States, not only in Florida, all over every state, hopefully over the next 10, 20, 30 years.
Outstanding. So why would other business owners come to this type of program?
Oh, look, Florida in general is a fantastic business-friendly environment. So I think the key driver behind coming to this sort of function is to have that network and have people to talk to that you can pick up the phone if you've got an issue.
Okay. J&J Waste Management, big company, and it's going to about to get bigger under your leadership. Great to see you.
Thanks, Jeff.
All righty, good stuff.
Sure. Is that Valencia College, one of our main mission goals is the workforce and helping to provide the talent for our local community. How do you see Valencia in meeting the promise and providing the talent that you're looking for?
Well, I think the continuity in the flow that you're talking about, which is connecting business, connecting future employment with a base of students and potential students, developing relationships with interns and those types of things is the future. We've talked about that internally, so the timing is perfect for us to move that forward. Another thing I was really impressed with being a first-timer here today is that the quality of the speakers and the participants, they understand that the best way to grow is to give away. The best way to develop is to sow into others. And, you hear a lot about servant leaderhood or leadership and so forth like that. These people are put it in place, and this is a winner. I'll be back.
And at Valencia, we believe opportunity for all students, no matter where they are. That's why access is very important to us. So I recall that when we tried to open our Ponciana campus, and they were asking, why here? And we said, that's why we're here. Because they said, nobody goes to college here. And our response was, that's exactly why you're here.
That's your mission.
And that's our mission. So how do you see as a business owner the mission that we have at Valencia, that access is important for all our students, no matter where they are?
Well, I love what you said at the end there. You said your vision is to make a higher education affordable. $10,000 or less. That's heroic. That's so counter to every direction that most institutions, well, every other institution I'm familiar with, is moving toward, which is greater expense, and there's an enormous need, because education leads to employment, which leads to all sorts of great things.
And the community, the community prospers because of the investment we all make.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here, and that is, will you be joining us in that journey that we started to make sure that access and affordability is the most important mission of both of us, from institution as well as the business owners?
Doctor, I'm not a politician, but I can tell you, flat out, I'm with you for sure. I'd be honored to be on that journey with you, and I believe in it. Like I said, we had been talking about this prior to, and getting some talent, some young talent in the sophomore, junior, and so forth. I mean, I've got a candidate, right? He's one of my sons. So it's beautiful to see that develop. So absolutely count on me.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care.